OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Adrian with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And a packed show as ever coming your way. We've got an interview with CJ Stander coming along a little bit later about his lockdown life. He moved back to South Africa and he's back in Ireland now, so he'll be talking about the resumption of the Pro 14 season over the next few weeks. We've also got the Premier League final day on Sunday, a massive day it looks set to be. You've got the relegation battle, the European battle. David Meyler will be joining us to preview that later, and Phil Egan's Monday's headlines today have more pressure on them than they've ever had on them, so he'll be with us in studio very shortly indeed. You can tweet us at Off The Ball. You can comment on the stream below if you've got anything you want to talk to us about today. First up, we're bringing you a piece from last night's football show. Mark Lawrenson joined Nathan and the chat took a few wild turns.
Is there a real risk for Liverpool of sticking with what would essentially be the same squad for 2 seasons in a row? Okay, Minamino came in January, but do you not automatically, like you played in, 5 title-winning sides with Liverpool, do you not need to be refreshing the squad constantly?
Yeah, you do. I think maybe Klopp feels that part of that addressing for him has been the introduction of the 3 young lads who won't play, I don't think, regularly next year, but they'll probably get more game time. I just think he looks around and I think he's just thinking, well, I'm not quite sure who he's going to get and who he really wants. And, obviously talked about the money, etc., because the front 3 are almost set in stone. So, are you going to ask? That's why we basically got Minamino, because they think that he'll grow into the role. Origi's come on as substitute, started the odd game. We know he's not anything like or has the ability of the front 3 that we already have. But that's the most difficult thing is who's going to come, because that person or persons would want to play regular football. I know you occasionally read and someone's got a contract saying, he's got to play so many games, which is absolute rubbish because no manager would ever do that. But
should they be that set in stone? Like, Roberto Firmino last night finally got his goal at Anfield, his first in the Premier League this season. He wears that number. He wears that number 9 jersey. I know he's not the out-and-out striker, and he drops deep, and some would say he's the key figure of the 3 of those. And
I would be one of them.
Right.
Because he's the glue. He's the glue to the other 2, because if you watch the other 2 who are outstanding players, they go all over the place, which they're allowed to do. It's part of the system. But generally, Firmino is always central to everything. His movement's far because he's a problem, because he plays away from central defenders but behind holding midfield players. He's got fantastic awareness, and everyone makes a big thing about the goals and stuff like that. But they've just won the league, 7 games to go, and in terms of his play, he's as good as anybody. Yes, he'd probably like to score more goals, but hell, he makes an awful lot of chances and pulls in all sorts of holes for the other. If you ask the other 2, Salah and Mane about Firmino, they would just wax lyrical about him all the time, and the manager certainly does.
Salah's a peculiar one when it comes to Liverpool supporters. In many ways, last night's performance sums up a lot of their fears around them. How many chances did he need? And he didn't score, and you could see his frustration when he was been taken off without getting the goal. And there's a sense of, well, does he contribute enough if he's not scoring, and does he take enough of his chances? And then you just look at the statistics, and if he'd scored last night, I think he'd be the first Liverpool player since Roger Hunt to score 20 league goals in 3 consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
Golden Boot the first 2 seasons, 19 so far this season. Are there parts of his game that you can understand why people get frustrated, or are expectations just sometimes when it comes to Liverpool unrealistically high?
No, I can understand, and I think players that play with him get a little bit frustrated because he's always looking to score when we know occasionally he would be better placed to pass it into one of the other boys. But the stat you've just given me, that 20 goals, 3 consecutive seasons, is incredible, because I think if you asked a lot of people when we signed him, they thought he was kind of, a left winger, which he sort of was at Chelsea, or, could also play on the right. And And basically Klopp's just turned him into a right-sided goal machine, which is, I mean, that in itself, to see the vision, we'll have the three of them, just to see the vision of the three of them is amazing. And he's improved all three ways, improved every single player apart from the goalkeeper, the old goalkeeper Karius. But it's one of, yes, people do get a bit frustrated with him, and I think he gets angry with himself when he doesn't score. He does need a lot of chances, but how many goals will we score this year? And as I say, won the league 7 games before the end, which as we know has been unheard of even in the history of the football club.
We'll find out who the footballer of the year is this weekend. It could well be Kevin De Bruyne. Liverpool supporters can't have too much to complain about, considering the 2 years Manchester City were so dominant. Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk were footballers of the year, but it seems to be between Kevin De Bruyne and Jordan Henderson, with maybe Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold be in the mix. Jordan Henderson is obviously this totemic figure, the real talisman of this Liverpool side, who has improved massively himself and is a great personal story and how he's come on over the last 10 years. Does he deserve to be in the reckoning alongside the player of Kevin De Bruyne's calibre?
Yeah, I think he does. For all the reasons you just said, but plus, of course, as well, captain of a team that's won the league 7 games early. He's improved. I think the thing with Jordan now is when the ball gets played into him, he looks forward all the time, where there was a spell which frustrated everybody, myself included, where he'd pass it sideways, he'd pass it backwards, and he's matured, basically. And also, by the way, with a lot of the stories about the footballers in lockdown with COVID, coronavirus and stuff, he was fabulous. He's, Liverpool came out with the furlough system, and everyone went, "Oh my goodness, what have they done?" But he's come out as a real leader. We know he's a leader on the pitch, etc. But spoken with an awful lot of sense. I personally, if I was voting, I would vote for Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah.
You're going to say, why would you vote for him? I'll tell you why I vote for him, because would we win the league without Jordan Henderson? Yes. Would we win the league without Virgil van Dijk? No.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there was many people questioning that selection. In a way, he's almost just taken for granted. You saw Graham Souness asking him after the match last night, do you ever break a sweat? He just makes it look so easy. He
does. I mean, and that's, it reminds me of Hansen in many, many ways, but very, very similar.
Better?
Better than Al. It's a close run thing. I mean, Al, if you think when Hansen started, he used to maraud through midfield all the time and set people up. And what he couldn't do, Al, was score. He'd get through and miss it to fall apart. But he was. It's a very, very close run thing. But they are just so similar. I think probably with Virgil van Dijk, I mean, his heading ability is absolutely than Al, but it's a close one, and I'm not saying it because Hansen's my mate. It's very, very close. So they are definitely the best two that Liverpool have ever had, and they've had one or two decent ones.
How is Hansen? Because you never hear or see from him at all. Obviously, he was such a pivotal figure in so many people's lives growing up, watching him on Match of the Day. He was the main man on television for so many years, and obviously decided to retire, and unlike most people, just stepped away completely.
He always said that's what he was going to do. I see him on a semi-regular basis. In fact, if you go to Hillside Golf Course, you'll see him nearly every day, which is he also lives in the closest house to Royal Birkdale Golf Course as well. Al's fine, but I think what he did, and I admire him for it, he just said once he walked away from TV and radio and press media, he said, "I'm done. That's me done now." I'm pretty sure. He didn't even do anything for Kenny when he got knighted. I mean, they are massive pals, the two of them. Right. And I think he said to Kenny, look, if I do this, then I have got no reason when people ring up, I've got no reason why I have to say no. But he just said no, he's done his bit, and he's done his bit, and he golfs every day. He's a granddaddy. I think he's got, crikey, I can't remember now, I think it might be 4 or even 5 grandkids, and we all live extremely close. There's 8 or 9 of us who live within. It is within a mile radius, so we see each other all the time, and it's just so funny because people come up to you and talk about, you know, different kind of stuff like that, and we're all like limping into the village and all that stuff. I find it hilarious, to be quite honest with you.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it? It must be such it's a special thing that not many players, former players, have. Like John Giles is on with us every Thursday night, was on earlier tonight, and so often he'll speak about players of his generation who ended up in the scrap heap, who were treated so poorly by clubs when they were let go.
Sure.
And obviously, more and more money has come into the game in the last few years, and clubs are in a better position to involve former players, and Liverpool has become this behemoth, and there is work for former players, and they want their ambassadors, and they want you there at the ground. But it does mean that what you achieved isn't forgotten, and it gives you, maybe I'm over-egging it, but I get the sense it gives you a real purpose as well, that you are still relevant part of this club.
Yeah, it's great, and I mean, we were, you know, we jokingly we'd say every year that they didn't win the league, we became better players, didn't we? and we said, bloody hell, they've knackered us now because they've gone and won it. But yeah, listen, it is what it is, and people all have their opinions and stuff. But whenever we go to the ground, we're treated fabulously, and it obviously it feels like another world, but you know, when we all get together, I mean, when the Birkdale lads are all out, so you've got Hanson, Dalglish, Whelan, Begling, Gillespie, me, Steve McMahon, Alan Kennedy. I've probably forgotten someone already, but within 20 seconds of being with each other, it's like we're back in the dressing room and the banter starts and the Mickey taking and all that kind of stuff, and that's what I think. That's what I miss more than anything, apart from maybe obviously wishing I was a lot fitter because of my age. But the banter's fabulous. And Hanson's the worst one because he remembers absolutely everything. You start telling a story and he'd jump in and go, no, that wasn't quite like that. It was like this. But it's great. And we've all got great memories, obviously.
Yeah. Jeez, when you say that, it's a shame that Hanson has stepped away to that extent that if he's not coming back for Kenny Dalglish's knighthood, he ain't ever coming back.
No. Return of the man who never came back. That's what we say to him.
Jurgen Klopp, then, I don't know if you've got to spend much time with him over the last 4 or 5 years. There was obviously the incident on the sideline last night between himself and Frank Lampard, and Lampard was giving him a little bit of that, and because there's nobody in the ground, the footage comes out, and you can hear exactly what they're saying to each other, and Lampard says, the first title you've ever won, you're giving it the effing big un. Which Klopp replies with a couple of expletives of his own, and Lampard comes out afterwards and congratulates Liverpool on winning the title, but basically warns them about becoming arrogant.
Yeah.
Is there a bit of arrogance in Klopp? Because I would suspect if you walked out in the street and said, even for non-Liverpool supporters, give us somebody you'd love to go for a pint with, Klopp would be right up there, man of the people. Is that a public persona, and is a very different man around the club?
No, he is what. There's a little bit of arrogance in him. I think that's a very Germanic thing, anyway. To be honest with you, I mean, about their national team, whenever you used to play against German teams, there was always a little bit of arrogance, which I don't think is a bad thing in football. If people obviously believe in what they can do, and then obviously if they produce when they need to, then they deserve their arrogance. Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but it's also part of the game, and I think the biggest thing with Klopp, I mean, there's how long have you got? But there's lots and lots of things. But he has this fabulous way of just getting everybody together. You know, if you go to Melwood and he sees you, but he's in a rush to go somewhere else, he still comes up, shakes your hand. Well, obviously not at the moment. And you know, how you doing? Excuse me, and all those kind of things. And he's been great with the old players, because he just said to his lads, he just said, look, this is what you want. Look at these fellas. Look what they've won. That's, you know, the boards at Melwood and obviously at the ground. And he said, don't let that frighten you. He said, but that's the standard that you've got to get to. And he's just a decent bloke. And I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you a story, Nathan, but he hadn't been here that long. And a friend of mine lived in the same village in Formby, and my mate Richard had taken his dog for a walk and stuff, and went into the pub on his way home before he got back to the house just for a quick pint. And as I say, it was early in Klopp's reign, and it was on the road where Klopp lives, behind the wooden gates and everything. And Richard said to me, so I'm drinking my pint, and he said, Archie's dog is like sat at his feet drinking some water out of the bowl, and he said, I felt this figure alongside me. He said, as I looked at him, he looked at me, and Klopp said, you okay? And Richard said, yeah, I'm fine. And Richard said, you like it here? And Klopp said to him, like it? He said, what's there not to like? He said, it's £9.99 all you can eat. Now, I mean, how good is that? It's fab, isn't it? It's just, if that's not a normal person, that, he's probably on about 8, 9, 10 million a year. What bit of the £9.99 didn't you gasp? Great.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, he does seem to have very much bought into what Liverpool are all about. You spoke there about there was that time when with every passing year you became greater players and the folklore and the history and the nostalgia, and you're wheeled out to tell the stories. Yeah. When you do look back at some of those groups of players who came through and who went close, do you ever think the weight of the history and having so many of yourself, Hansen, all these different figures constantly on the television, do you think that ever weighed on them? No.
I just think they weren't quite good enough. Don't get me wrong, they were very good players and they had some very good teams. They just quite weren't quite good enough. And I think, the football club's obviously always been successful, or relatively obviously been successful, and it's always been there. And I can only, when I went, I could have gone to Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool on the same day, and I just went, I'm going to Liverpool because I want to be part of a team that wins stuff and everything. And, you say that, but you obviously, your fingers crossed thinking, crikey, I hope that's right. And I was lucky that it was. But I think there's a little something that's different between teams that win consistently with the other ones who are very, very good but don't quite win it. And it's not anything to do with hunger, because everybody wants to win all the time. It's just a certain little je ne sais quoi, which is, this particular team have got between themselves where they trust each other and they just manage when they play poorly to win games. I mean, you know what? Looking at the way the team have played this year and majority of performances have just been outstanding. I occasionally think, crikey, in the 80s, more often than not, we could be totally average, but we kept winning.
Right.
And that was the thing. We just kept winning. All right, the pitches were crap and everything, and you got, every team had a big centre forward that used to try and knock me and Hansen out and all that stuff, and you just had to cope with all that rubbish. But we just managed to win. And I think that's it. And this lot have it, most definitely. Look at the way they play. Everybody knows the way that they play. They know about the fullbacks pouring forward, and they know when they do that Mane on one side and Salah on the other side just tuck in and give them the width and everything. Nathan, hardly anyone can stop them. And you can video everything about Liverpool. They do not change the way they play. And I think, it took Klopp a while just to get this press thing all the time. And eventually everyone's grasped it. But if you see them train, by the way, at the start of the season, he trains them like dogs.
Right.
He really, really does train them like dogs. And there's no let-up. It's not like...
And is that all with ball at feet? Is that all replicating what happens in the match? Or
everything you see in the game, he does in training. They've been known to have 3 sessions in a day before today. So... he just hammers it home to everybody. And I think the clever thing with him is no one can turn around and say, I wasn't quite sure what to do in those particular circumstances, because there's no grey area. It's black and it's white with Klopp.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of times over at Anfield, get a chance to maybe talk to one or two of the Liverpool players after the games, and you ask them about Klopp. And intensity is the word that comes up every time, just how relentlessly intense he is on the training ground and how much he expects out of them. In terms of the style then, it feels as if it has evolved, because you think back to a couple of years ago when they got to the Champions League final against Real Madrid. Yeah. They were probably the best counter-attacking team in Europe at that stage, and it suited them so well against the best European teams because they could burst on the break and they had the talents of Salah and Mane. Now they're a team that push the centre-backs up right into the opposition half almost and just try and suffocate the life out of you. Do you think there's going to be another tactical evolution for next season?
No, but I think it'll stay as it is because it works.
Right.
And, I think against even the better teams, if you're making their midfield players play with their heads down and not be able to look up and pick passes, they're not brilliant midfield players, are they? You know, because then they just become ordinary because it's really, really difficult. And, you know, on the best days, Liverpool just hound the life out of everybody. You know, Firmino, we talked about him before, he's part of it. You know, he's responsible for kind of the width of the penalty area in terms of closing everybody down. And everybody knows it's just something that they have to do. And the other thing as well about it is you know, I don't really look at stats and stuff, but I bet Liverpool play more long balls than nearly any team, certainly in the Premier League and probably across most of Europe. If you look, when Liverpool kick off, what do they do? It goes back to, I don't know whether it's Fabinho or even one of the back boys, and it goes diagonally to one of the sides, and it goes like 40, 50 yards. And you know, Sam Allardyce got slaughtered for playing long ball, but I mean it was basic. But Liverpool play as many long balls as they do short balls.
Just to finish off then on the, again, Van Dijk-Hansen comparison, and bring yourself into this as well, because they do, as you say, whether it's the two full-backs playing those crossfield balls, they do them with such regularity, they make it look so simple, or Van Dijk with that diagonal ball, 40, 50 yards. Did you and Hansen have it in your locker to play those accurate, long, diagonal balls? And did you play them on a regular basis?
No, we probably couldn't reach. Big, heavy, muddy pitch.
Right.
No, we didn't. Listen, but the thing was then as well is, and everybody used to say about us sometimes, oh, they just keep the ball at the back, they pass it sideways and all that. Do you know what? We only ever did that when we were winning and we were just like want to knacker the opposition. But the first 20 minutes of any game, Ronnie Moran, who was only happy when he was unhappy, would slaughter us if we didn't look forward straight away in those games. Once you got comfortable and you were winning, then you could move the opposition around. But no, we didn't. We weren't that kind of way. And if you think about it, I mean, Craig Johnson or Sammy Lee would play on the right, and they'd play right on the touchline. But Ronnie Whelan was like left-sided midfield player in most of the teams, and he joined in the middle. So we didn't have that kind of luxury. And if you're right-footed, your natural way of a diagonal ball is to hit it from right to left, obviously. So no is probably the answer. But I mean, Ronnie Moran would just be on your case straight away if he didn't look forward, and he'd be followed by a Mr. Sir Kenny Dalglish as well, who'd be like looking at you saying, "Why aren't you passing it to me, you muppets?"
And you could understand him.
What?
You could understand Kenny.
Say again.
You know, whenever you're on, Mark, we like to get 2 gigs for the price of 1 out of you. You are, of course, Off the Ball's resident movie buff. And it's been a tough time for movie buffs because you can't go. The cinemas have been shut.
No.
So what have you been watching? What has been on in the Lawrenson household over the last few weeks?
Right, Netflix. Netflix has saved my life. So my favourite thing on Netflix I've watched is Ozarks.
Oh, yes. Marty Bird.
What?
Marty Bird.
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally up there. But then I've been watching on a more somber note. I watched Filthy Rich.
Yeah, that's a bit grim.
But do you know something? I've actually had lunch with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right. How did that come about?
Well, when I managed Oxford, I finished at Liverpool on the Thursday, I managed Oxford from the Friday, and of course I worked for a dad, Robert Maxwell, and Kevin Maxwell, his son, and I was invited to a couple of lunches of which she was at. I was actually very, very honoured because all the family were there, the immediate family, and me. And I'm sure I can say this on the radio because it's not really a problem. I remember one Sunday lunch that we had, and it was all their kids. Robert Maxwell and his wife and everything, and me, and we had a couple of glasses of wine and stuff like that. And Robert Maxwell did this thing where he would be asking them questions. They're all very, very bright and well-educated people. And he just stood up, slightly the worse for wear, and he pointed at Ghislaine and he said, and primarily looking at the boys in the family, just went, "She is the only person in this family with any balls." Well, look how that turned out.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, that went down an avenue that we weren't quite expecting.
Sorry about that. Well, listen, there's no films. I had to speak about something, didn't I? You led me down the garden gate.
We did, and we opened it right up, and so you had a somewhat of a personal interest in Filthy Rich then. Don't go down the Donald Trump line now if we were to ask you
Don't
about
worry.
Ghislaine Maxwell wishing her well.
What he said what did he say? I wish her well.
I wish her well. Exactly.
Jesus Christ, you've only got to watch that for 5 minutes. You think, how on earth?
Yeah.
Aren't you?
Yeah, it's as you say, it's a particularly grim story. So Ozark is, in compared to Filthy Rich, Ozark is pretty much a comedy.
Yeah, Ozark is, and I watched El Chapo, which was the Colombian cartel. I seem to have seen loads of those. They're quite sort of easy.
There's a bit of a pattern emerging here. There's a lot of drugs in all these Netflix documentaries you're watching, Mark.
Well, I just find it absolutely fascinating. It's just like, you can't believe that it goes on, but it does. And we live in sleepy Birkdale, and you think, oh my God, but I think even we've got a little bit of a problem here as well. But anyway, but no, Ozark was just fabulous. I'll tell you what I also did. I rewatched Sopranos.
I still have never watched it.
Are you joking?
Much to my shame.
Oh, you've got to watch it. James Gandolfini. I mean, he's dead, and he died in Venice, didn't he? He's absolutely fabulous. I then start, when I watch stuff like that, I then start looking things up on the internet, as you do. And, you know, when they went to make the 5th or the 6th series, James Gandolfini was getting really he was getting all sorts of parts, all sorts of offers for all sorts of films. And they had to delay filming for 6 months while he waited to finish a film. And he came back and apologised to everyone and just said there's 6 or 8 major figures. He gave them $50,000 each, $50,000 to go and buy themselves a car each, and just to say sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, proper bloke.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Sunday Paper Review
On Off the Ball.
When he wants to do something, he does it. A hugely impressive person, apart from being obviously a brilliant golfer.
My cousins disliked their dog so intensely that they renamed it Scalacci.
Yeah.
And the dog was called Scalacci from then on.
It's a great piece of journalism. I mean, that sums up what he's like. The intro to this is just brilliant. He is an absolute control freak.
digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on Off the Ball.
Missing this?
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season. Unbelievable.
Then get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
A very good morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. If you're just joining us on the podcast, you have missed Mark Lawrenson looking ahead to the last day of the Premier League season. He was talking about some other stuff as well. If you've missed that, it really needs to be seen and listened to be believed. Check that out. We are live every weekday morning from 7:30, and you do get a lot of great stuff between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. So check out our social feeds every weekday morning for that. Great couple of hours coming your way now, though. We've got David Meyler as part of our preview of Sunday's final day of the Premier League. A load of great storylines at the top of the table, at the bottom of the table. We've got Phil Egan as well in just a moment, going through Monday's headlines today. And CJ Stander, Munster's CJ Stander, will be joining us later on for a chat about the resumption of the Pro 14, about getting back to Ireland from his lockdown in South Africa and getting back on the training pitch. We've got all the sports pages coming your way in a little while as well. You can tweet us at Off the Ball if you want to get involved. Adrian Barry, how are you?
Morning all.
There's so much things from that Mark Lawrenson interview that I could put to you, but we might do that another time. Let's talk a little bit about Frank Lampard, because there is a slight connection between the theme of a manager losing his rag on the sideline and our esteemed guest, David Meyler, later on, because, you know, David Meyler, he's spoken about it plenty of times in the past, has experienced the wrath of a Premier League manager in a far more physical way, let's admit it, than Frank Lampard delivered his ferocity on Wednesday night. You've been looking back on Alan Pardew versus David Meyler over the last little while.
Is there anything we love more than a manager losing his rag in the sideline? Like, no. I'm not sure that there is. And like it's such a great opportunity for us all to get up on our perch, which is the phrase of the week, obviously, and the moral high ground, right? And like, Alan Pardew shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't be there. What's he doing there? What's he doing to get involved with the player? And insert appropriate name here, as it's repeated in the sidelines of every sport that's ever existed across the planet. And Alan Pardew particularly has been at the centre of one or two of these things. He's always picked, it struck me, on, people in their peak physical condition. When you look at the likes of people like Manuel Pellegrini, Arsene Wenger, Martin O'Neill, a linesman, he's got a type, I think.
What are you trying to say about David Meyler?
He's the one exception, isn't he? And I think at that, like, it wasn't that premeditated. It just, the opportunity materialised. He did say afterwards, I watched a bit of the match of the day footage, and it was like Robbie Savage saying that he should be sacked and he should retire. Alan Hansen praising, and a Newcastle statement came out in the middle of the programme saying that he'd been fined 100 grand and given a formal warning, and Alan Pardew saying this was great, swift justice. I thought that maybe Newcastle, it was really about the optics, because swift justice in that regard isn't really proper justice, because you want to take your time and figure out exactly what went wrong. You want to hear from the man himself and get into the nuts and bolts of it and then deliver your verdict. But it was like, the swiftness of this is really good. But there was definitely a lot of the papers that Gary Lineker was talking about, the papers that were coming the following day, and there was a lot of wringing of hands. Listen, Alan Pardew is a particularly dislikable person anyway, isn't he? He's one of those in the parlance. And yeah, at that time it was so blatant. But there was pretty hilarious stuff where he was in the post-match interview. It was like a classic non-apology apology. If I headbutted him, I'm sorry. Now I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't exactly what he said, but that was exactly the tone of it. He said, "It's
kind of like what was O.J. Simpson's book called? If I Did It." That's kind of like the line that Alan Pardew was taking there.
Yeah, when it comes to sporting comparisons, I think that he said like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do anything. I was just moving my head towards him to get him away from me, if anything." Like, no, not really. Like, you just headbutted him. Like, it's a pretty clear headbutt. What I'm saying is, Alan Pardew should have come out afterwards and said, "I'm really sorry. I headbutted the guy. I shouldn't have done that." And he was saying all this sort of stuff in the context of, if I headbutted him, I'm sorry.
That is on the very top level of sideline range. That is top tier content. By the way, anybody who headbutts somebody is trying to get the person away from them. That is the whole process of headbutting somebody, I would have thought. Two other examples definitely came to mind this week after the Frank Lampard incident. One of them, just on a rung, probably on a similar level to Lampard, but channeled in a different way, was Jose Mourinho versus Chelsea. Do you remember as Manchester United boss when he went back there? Was it at half-time? No, it was at full-time, sorry. It was because it was a very, very late goal, and then one of the Chelsea coaches comes out and celebrates in front of him, and then Jose Mourinho does that thing where he waits like a couple of seconds, runs after him so that everybody can see he's sprinting after the opposition coach, so that people can hold him back from launching a barrage of fury in the face of the Chelsea coach. That was one of my favourite. But also, Louis van Gaal versus Arsene Wenger and the sarcastic dive with Mike Dean standing there beside him and Louis van Gaal flops to the ground. So that for me is how you're supposed to do it. Don't headbutt somebody. Don't go full Frank Lampard roaring abuse at him. Don't go Jose Mourinho running after somebody. Do a Louis van Gaal. Be, I don't know, a little bit sneery and fall to the ground and dive. That's how you want to do it. But we might chat to David Meyler about that a little bit later on. Are you pro, anti Frank Lampard on the situation here? Have you got any bit of sympathy for him?
I can't figure out whether he's gone sympathy for him. Probably. Like, I can't figure out whether, because he's from the school of Jose Mourinho, and this is lesson number one, folks. Pull up a pew and listen to what Jose has to say in his coaching class. This is lesson one. So I can't quite figure out whether it's that level of control, like that Jose level of control, or actually if he's just lost the plot. Because if it's the latter, you'd have to be concerned for him.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about Liverpool. Mark Lawrenson chatting about their title again over the course of the week. Is this a sort of new thing that you tuned into during the week that Liverpool have now celebrated in a different way? Because, I guess, lifting the trophy always has the symbolic importance of how are the team going to celebrate it and how is it going to happen in the stadium. But this has obviously been quite a big gap between the actual event of them winning the title that night after City versus Manchester and actually lifting the trophy during the week. Were you kind of plugged into how Liverpool were going to do it, how the fans were going to celebrate it, and how Klopp and his players were going to celebrate it?
Not really. I hadn't given it a huge amount of thought in advance. It did strike me that without fans, the whole thing is so cheesy. Like, you get away with all of that when there's fans there and everybody's reacting to it and everybody's going mad and we're all in it together sort of thing. But, like, there's a level of cheese about Klopp anyway, isn't there? Like, you know, as each player comes up, he's, as Lampard would say, giving it the biggin, with the kind of, you know, solo Mexican wave, if you can have such a thing. Hands in the air, I think they call it. But it all, I don't know about you, but it was all so cheesy. And even I watched not all of it, because there's like a half an hour broadcast from Genie Wijnaldum on maybe Instagram TV or something like that afterwards. And like, when you can't, maybe it's when you can't hear what everybody's saying, you give them some sort of level of credibility to assume that there's some deep, you know, reflection on what's been an unbelievable season for Liverpool. But then you hear what they're saying and it's like 12-year-olds in a playground.
The Hendo Shuffle,
a bit cheesy.
The Hendo Shuffle out of 10 for you?
I love the Hendo Shuffle. I think because this guy's now shot himself, it struck me afterwards when he was having the conversation with Jamie Carragher on the sideline, that like, Carragher's one of the most recognisable Liverpool football club people, you know, that exists on the planet, and like epitomises it maybe better than anybody else. And here's this guy who's going to go down to the annals of time as a 10 times bigger club legend and is going to have a club statue outside. And I think he's going to be doing the Hendo Shuffle on that statue, isn't he?
It's a possibility, really. I think it's kind of only right and proper that Jordan Henderson is doing the Hendo Shuffle there. It's not like, I mean, you've just given the crafts person a really good idea there, I think, for an actual idea for the sculpture. Let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. We are going to get stuck into Phil Egan's Monday's headlines today in just a moment. Sports page is then coming your way at 25 past 8. David Meyler, as we've been previewing already, joining us at 8:45 this morning. And Rushmore reaction. There's been lots of highs, lots of lows when it comes to our Mt Rushmore series. We'll be going through some of those highs and lows after 9 o'clock this morning. And then CJ Stander will be with us before we wrap up this morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Phil Egan, good morning.
Morning, how you doing?
Very well. We've got your Monday headlines right here, and I'm going to read them out. So we've got 3 headlines today. So on Monday's newspapers, it says here, Fox's sake. So I think you're predicting a Liverpool or Leicester City defeat on Sunday. Is that what we're saying here?
Well, it works both ways. I've covered myself there, because if Leicester win, then yeah, that can be elation. That can be Leicester's celebration. But if obviously that can apply to Manchester United as well, as in as the headline says, if they lose and they don't get that top 4 spot.
It's kind of remarkable that we found ourselves in this situation on the final day, isn't it? Like, it's very, very rare. Like, we have dramatic Champions League situations down through the year. Like, I mean, food poisoned gate with Spurs back in 2006 when Arsenal swooped on in and got the top 4 position. But actually, where these two teams are going head to head on the final day, I can't remember a time like this. Yeah, because
the last few times we've had situations where under Klopp, Liverpool have had to win on the final day. I know they had to beat Brighton, they had to beat Middlesbrough, but they were games they were expected to win. Whereas, like, the only surprise over the last few weeks is how Wolves dropped a few points, where it wasn't all going to be one bumper day where 2 places, 2 games, where it was all going to be on the Chelsea Wolves and Leicester Man United game. So now, obviously, you know, you could get a situation where, you know, United lose, but they still finish in the top 4. Whereas, you know, maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago, it looked like it could be a winner takes all. But you'd still favour United, because even though the last couple of performances have been great, I'm not going to give them a free pass for the cup final or semi-final, but they changed things. They obviously, Solskjaer showed that his priority is getting that top 4 finish. They are third. When you think back to Earlier this year, at one stage, Leicester were 14 points ahead of Manchester United. United have reeled them in. They've done all the hard work. Now they just have to finish it off. But I think it'll actually suit United. They obviously won't play for the draw, but they can sit in and let Leicester have possession. And Leicester, they're not as creative as they have been because they're obviously missing James Maddison. They're missing their two fullbacks as well. And United, if they can pick them off in the break, I think they'll. It should be a comfortable enough afternoon for them.
There's been plenty of questions about what Manchester United need to do in the transfer market in order to solidify that defence a little bit more. It's been a leaky defence. We've seen it getting caught quite a bit on set pieces. There's been a lot of criticism of Victor Lindelof, and that's fair enough. They will need to strengthen at the back if they want to challenge for the Premier League. But where do their attack rate, in your opinion, Phil, if you're comparing them to Liverpool, to Manchester City, to Chelsea's next season attack? Like, are they a top 3 attack whatsoever? I know we put this to Andy Mitten yesterday, but it just seems that all the criticism and all the suggestions of how Manchester United are to improve is focused on the defence, where they probably need to make a couple of attacking signings as well.
Yeah, big time. I mean, they're obviously linked with Jadon Sancho, and I think people have said the form of Mason Greenwood means that Jadon Sancho isn't as much of a priority, but if Jadon Sancho is available, United have to go after him, and they have to strengthen, because Greenwood's been sensational in the last few months, but you need strength and depth. Also, you look at the other night, Rashford wasn't very good. You have to get that consistency. It's very easy to say over the last couple of months since the restart that United's front three has been excellent, but you have to do it over a full season at least. You have to start getting consistency, producing over a couple of seasons. The potential is there anyway. I think out of the three, Greenwood, we've heard a lot about him in recent years, how this guy was destined for getting to the top. It's actually Anthony Martial who surprised me the most, because I've always been a fan of Rashford. I think in an attacking team, Rashford, that's where you get the best of him. But Martial, at times, nothing even to do with the price tag that they paid Monaco, because he didn't set that. But he's shown glimpses. But actually, in the last few weeks, he's shown a bit of, he's got a bit of bite about him as well. And sometimes he drifts in and out of games, but he's been excellent. Now, can they do that at the start of next season? And when there's a clean slate at the start of next season, and if United make a few signings, the pressure will be on. It won't be, let's get into the top 4. Now people are saying, okay, you're in the top 4, not only do you stay there, you have to start closing the gap on the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City. So with that comes an added pressure. So can that front three answer that? We don't know. We won't know until next season. But I certainly think they need backup there. I mean, look at the bench now. If they are bringing on players, the likes of Juan Mata, Jesse Lingard, they're not up to it. You mentioned Victor Lindelof. Yeah, they need another player. Is Harry Maguire really going to win a Premier League title for you? Luke Shaw has had obviously he's injured at the moment. He's had an okay, he's solid, but is he going to take it to that next level? Wan-Bissaka is obviously an excellent defender, and something that he needs to improve on obviously is his attacking, but first and foremost he is a defender, so that's something that they can work on, his attacking side of things. And the goalkeeper's an issue as well, so it's like there's plenty of work to do, but do you know what? If they can get into the top 4, then they build on that. The
story this week is that Chelsea might be coming in for Dean Henderson. What do you do in this situation if you're Manchester United and you have a club coming in for Henderson who'll pay him up to 130 grand a week, I think was the figure that's been mentioned in the British press this week? How do Manchester United guarantee that he will be happy at the club if they want to keep David De Gea? I personally can't see a workable situation here. They'll have to probably give the guy a guarantee that he can come in and actually get some game time. Basically, this is a roundabout way of asking what's your view on the De Gea situation and how they managed to fix this.
De Gea obviously isn't what he used to be. Dean Henderson, there's been a lot of calls for Dean Henderson to come in because he's been so good for Sheffield United, but there's a big difference with being a goalkeeper for Sheffield United and Manchester United. If he was to come in and replace David De Gea, if Solskjaer said, right, you're now our number 1, he's only 23. That's a lot of pressure. And you can have the odd off day for Sheffield United. Look what happens when De Gea has an off day for Manchester United. He is all over the headlines. He obviously was at fault for a couple of goals against Chelsea on Sunday, and what did Solskjaer have to do in the press conference before the West Ham game? He had to shut it down by saying, this is not going to be a David De Gea press conference. So that's the kind of scrutiny you're under if you're the Manchester United goalkeeper. Dean Henderson is good. We don't know. It goes back to what I said about the front three. You don't really know until you're thrown in there if you're good enough. And from what we've seen of Dean Henderson, he certainly has the potential, but that's all it is at the moment. As I said, it is a huge ask for a young goalkeeper to be the number one at Manchester United, to obviously, like, you know, if it happened, say, for example, that Dean Henderson was sitting on the bench next season and De Gea got injured, then Dean Henderson takes over, that's fine. But actually, if you were basically saying to him, you know, there's the keys to the house, it's all yours, that's a serious bit of pressure.
Obviously, should just get Queven Kelleher in, Phil, like, let him off to go to step down the grades a little bit at a lesser club, give him some experience, you know, send him out on loan and bring him back to a big club. Come here, joking aside, like the 3 to 6 battle is obviously fascinating. Who's done better this year, Brendan Rodgers or Nuno Espirito?
Do you know what? The way Wolves are finishing the season, I know they've dropped a few points, obviously the Arsenal game and the Sheffield United game, but Wolves are still in Europe. And the unfortunate thing for Leicester is the wind has come out of the sails. But if they finish the job off on Sunday, if they finish top 4, then my answer would be Brendan Rodgers, because at the start of the season we were talking about the top 6. Can anyone break into it? Wolves were definitely mentioned. There was a concern about Wolves because of the Europa League and they started their season so early, but actually the way they play on the counter-attack, you know, they conserve energy better than most clubs would. With Leicester, there was talk they could break into the top 6. There was that potential at the end of last season. There was a glimpse of what we could see. Don't forget, like at Christmas time, people were talking about Leicester being Manchester or Liverpool's nearest rivals, because it was clear Manchester City all was not right there, and obviously Leicester lost those games to Liverpool and City in the space of a couple of days. But you know, what's been shown over the last few weeks is they don't have the strength and depth in their squad. But as I said, if Rodgers gets that top 4 spot, then yeah, I'd be saying he's had a better season.
The next headline this morning, Phil, is with regards to Liverpool. 99 Reds ballooned is how the Monday morning headline reads. What's this about?
Okay, well, obviously Liverpool are on 96 points at the moment, which is a significant number in Liverpool's history. You know, the number that you'll often see just as for 96 when Liverpool relate to the Hillsborough disaster. So they're on 96 points now. Obviously, if they beat Newcastle on the final day, they go to 99 points. Now, why I've gone for Reds ballooned, obviously we know the song, but I'd say they're probably still celebrating. Jurgen Klopp the other night looked like a man that, you know, he was going to be making the phone call to say, yeah, I don't know if I'll be home this evening. You know, when you see me, you'll see me. We saw obviously what happened when Liverpool played Manchester City. There was a few indications that a few players had done more damage to themselves than others. There's obviously quite a few players in the Liverpool squad that don't actually drink. 2 of the front 3, we know James Milner doesn't either. Probably there are a few more in there as well. But yeah, I'd say they've enjoyed their last few days, but they'll probably enjoy going to Newcastle. It's a fixture that tends to be quite kind to Liverpool. They've had some good wins there. Obviously, they needed a late goal last season to get a 3-2 win. But yeah, if they don't actually win, I think Liverpool fans would think there'd be something quite fitting about winning the Premier League title on 96 points.
Yeah, it's a good point. I hadn't realised it till after the game the other night, actually. It'd be remarkable if that was how they actually finished. It's going to be ballot day tomorrow, I think, in the Football Awards. Look, we've had this conversation multiple times before, and you're a Kevin De Bruyne? No. Oh, sorry. Which side of the fence have you fallen on here?
Well, I think if I'm going for Young Player of the Year, for me would be Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then for Player of the Year, it's Van Dijk or Mane for me. Van Dijk has played every league game for the last 2 seasons. Take him out of the Liverpool team, they're not what they are at the moment. He makes the game look so easy. He doesn't break a sweat. He made a mistake last week against Arsenal, and you know, it was almost reassuring to see that he is human. So I think the only thing that might count against him is the fact that he won it last season. That, you know, people would think, well, this is what he does anyway, so is it really a surprise? Sometimes somebody could win it because they go to a level that we didn't think they had, and that's maybe where the Jordan Henderson stuff is coming from.
Final headline from Monday, looking into the future here. What were you thinking? What without the H? This is about Watford FC, I dare say, Phil.
Yeah. Watford relegated from the Premier League. 3 managers this season, sorry. Well, Hayden Mullins, I suppose, would count as the 4th.
Yeah.
But yeah, to get rid of Nigel Pearson, look, they wouldn't have beaten Manchester City the other night with Nigel Pearson there, but it's just the way they chop and change. And, you know, for a couple of seasons, people have said it's, you know, doesn't seem like the best way to manage things, but they've stayed in the Premier League comfortably most seasons. But this is the season they've come unstuck. And the signs were there towards the end of last season where they went on a bad run. But Javi Garcia had a bit of time on his hands because they obviously got to the cup final. So he was all right there. But obviously his time ran out early enough this season. Not many teams would have any beef with Watford, but Arsenal do. Troy Deeney has... You know, he's talked smack about Arsenal a lot, like, you know...
Where are your cojones?
Where are your cojones? Remember, then he had a penalty himself at the Emirates and he missed it. He didn't have the cojones. So this would be a chance now for Arsenal to bury Watford and just say, we'll show you where our cojones are. Now, Arsenal obviously didn't have a shot on target against Villa the other night, but it's at the Emirates. I think Arsenal will be a lot better. And you kind of think Watford are going to have to win this game because a draw won't be good enough if Villa get a draw away to West Ham.
This is good for football, the current situation in the relegation battle, right? We want Aston Villa to survive, and who cares about Watford and Bournemouth?
Well, I mean, there's obviously Watford and Bournemouth fans listening, and they're screaming at you now.
I know, but like as
yeah, there's a lot of Villa fans
as neutrals, you know.
Yeah, we've obviously.
I think Arsenal will be doing a favour for everybody if they relegate Watford.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and then obviously if Villa if they stay up, what happens? Jack Grealish, it seems like he's going to go anyway, regardless of. But if they get relegated, it makes Jack Grealish's decision for him, where, you know, he's a Villa supporter. If they get relegated, he can just say, well, I need to move on. I think Villa fans wouldn't hold it against him if he left, if he was part of the team that stayed up, and then it's up to Villa then to be able to recruit and be able to sustain Premier League football for the next few years without Jack Grealish.
So call it, Phil. Who's finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th and 17th?
Okay, so I think it'll be United and Chelsea will finish in United 3rd, Chelsea 4th, and in the last relegation spot, obviously we know Norwich are gone. I think Bournemouth will go, and I think Watford will go as well.
So status quo at the bottom of the table. Thanks a million, Phil.
Cheers, guys.
That is Phil's Monday's headlines today. Coming up next, we're going to round up the sports pages, and we're going to do that right now.
OTB AM.
OTBsports.com is where we'll start this morning. Bob Dylan is the most interesting man I've ever met. That is Mickey Rourke in his new piece with Andy Lee. He wanted me to kiss his ass. More for Mickey Rourke, explaining Robert De Niro and his feud there. I've had lunch with Ghislaine Maxwell. That's Mark Lawrenson, and his huge revelation there from the show last night. More from Mickey Rourke, saying he's weighing up a return to boxing later this year. And then there is the scene-setting article from OTB AM this morning. The sports pages. Starting with the Irish Times this morning. In Liverpool, a private party is packaged for the masses. Rory Smith's New York Times article leads the way in the Irish Times this morning. Fans were not allowed inside Anfield to watch, but the celebration was no less joyful and no less special. Meanwhile, United can forget title challenge with defence like this, writes Jonathan Liu. United's backline is their weakest link. Significant reinforcements are needed. And arrests made as thousands gather outside stadiums. This is, of course, in Liverpool and in Leeds, as both fan bases supported their champions. The Irish Examiner this morning leads with Ciara McGeehan. She's written a column to say, I tried to see this period as an opportunity, a blessing in disguise. Today was due to be the opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics. She has been in St. Moritz, training at altitude in the Swiss Alps. She says she is the fittest she has ever been currently as she lines up for a race in Bern tonight over 800 metres. Calendar for 2020-21 season set to be finalised, writes Jamie Gardner. This is for the domestic football calendar, the Premier League, currently slated for a September 12th restart. So these details need to be ironed out. You've got to fit in the Carabao Cup. You've got to fit in Champions League dates as well. So those things are not set in stone just yet. And it's sad to see history of provincial championships being brushed aside. This is Simon Lewis writing that plans by Golf's incoming unified governing body to introduce a new pathway to All-Ireland inter-club success at the expense of provincial championships have been described as pushing aside history. And then the story we want to get stuck into in just a moment from the Irish Examiner is Shane Curran, who wants GAA transfer market to stop counties giving up the ghost. More on that momentarily. The Irish Independent is where we're off to next. It leads with a photograph there of Shane Ryan, the Irish swimmer who's back in action. The main story: Lampard warns arrogant Liverpool to rein in attitude. Chelsea boss sends message to Klopp and co after foul-mouthed touchline spat at Anfield. And no upsurge in injuries since action resumed, says top physio. This is leading physio Paddy O'Brien, who's been involved with Tipperary, who has not witnessed a significant spike in GAA injuries. Is there a massive spike where I'm going, this is insane? No, I'm not, to be totally brutally honest. It's standard. So that is an encouraging sign, because there had been some information out there that players would struggle with fitness when they came back to action. Back page of the Herald then also has that Lampard story, don't get arrogant. But the main story here is around Thiago Alcantara. Hands off. Bayern chief insists pool target Thiago won't be bargained by. So this is Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. He says he wants to leave this summer, but I have to say honestly, the fees that are circulating in the media, I have to laugh at that. We will not have a summer sale at Bayern Munich. We will only consider selling if the numbers are right. So Liverpool fans, not amazing news there this morning. Back of the Mirror then. Stop giving the big un. Lampard in F-word bust-up with Klopp during thriller. Only league title you've ever won. TD calls on FAI chief to resign. Meanwhile, this is the war of words between Mark McSharry and Roy Barrett, which continued last night. Stars to kneel for League of Ireland return, which we'll get back to in a moment as well. And Cherries fear Howe may take time out. Eddie Howe could quit Bournemouth, they say, even if they get the job done this weekend. The unlikely task of staying in the Premier League. Back page of the Irish Daily Star. It's more from Frank Lampard. Only league title you've ever won, and you're effing giving it the big un. Meanwhile, call for FAI chief to resign. As mentioned, a picture there at the Gaelic grounds as well in Limerick last night ahead of who was playing there, Patrickswell, up against Adair in the County Senior Hurling Championship. And then Jude discussed at abuse. British police have launched an investigation after teen star Jude Bellingham received racist abuse on social media. The Irish Daily Mail leads with earn the right. That is the headline. Obey rules or give up on 500, says O'Mahony. This is John O'Mahony, and he's been talking about the fact that GAA clubs really need to stick by the rules if they're ever going to get an opportunity to up the amount of people at grounds to 500. This has been on the back of reports this week that Eglish had a player test positive for COVID-19 after playing a game last weekend, and that they broke the GAA's directive on keeping indoor facilities locked by congregating pre-game inside the club pavilion. O'Mahony then says the argument to raise the numbers in crowds is diluted by non-observance of other regulations that the GAA has put in place. And also there on the back of the Irish Daily Mail that Palace are in crunch talks with Roy Hodgson to keep him as their manager. Back page of the Irish Sun, the 250k penalty. West Ham's Michail Antonio has landed himself $250,000 because he's reached 10 Premier League goals. So that penalty that Paul Pogba gave away the other day has made Michail Antonio $250,000. And Kai Cat out of the bag. Kai Havertz has already completed his blockbuster move to Chelsea, according to Leroy Sané. That is the Irish Sun's stories for you. A couple of the UK back pages then. A lot on the cricket. Root, Archer is bowling at speed of light. Paceman raring to go in series decider. The other story of interest here on the back of the London Times is that only a third of fans to be in stadiums. So we had seen reports that stadiums in the UK were hoping to get a 50% attendance for perhaps the new season, but stadiums will be a maximum of 33% full and could be as low as 17% of capacity when fans return in October under social distancing rules, reports Martin Ziegler. It's Jofra Archer on the back of The Guardian as well. Fast and furious. This is Joe Root saying Archer is back and bowling at the speed of light. And Jared Maher, England could be without key players for Six Nations finale, he reports. So there could be a bit of crossover here between the closing stages of the Premiership and players potentially not being released for the conclusion of the Six Nations later on this year. More from Joe Root on Archer here as well. He's bowling at speed of light, he says. England paceman is fired up for comeback, warns captain. And then finally, the Racing Post. The front of the Racing Post is Epsom seeks new sponsor for Derby after surprise Investec exit. And the back is fully stoked England's main men to shine in final test. Right, Adrian, we've got 3 stories to go to in the papers this morning. The first one we want to go to is Sheahan Curran in the Irish Examiner. So will I go through the details here just to set the scene of Sheahan Curran? So the Irish Examiner reporting from the Mick and Mac GAA football podcast. Sheahan Curran's been in conversation with them, and he has said that he wants a transfer market and a draft to be brought into the GAA. Are we at a stage where we have to have a debate about maybe a draft system in the GAA, he asks? Are we at a stage where counties who openly go out and attract players into their communities and into their counties can freely do so? So he makes a comparison here with Cork and them having Larry Tompkins and Shea Fahy back in the day and winning All-Irelands, with those two in particular being central figures. If Brian Fenton and Brian Menton, he says, were to come and somebody was prepared to pay 100 grand of a transfer fee for each, I'd take them in the morning, he says. So he's talking about a transfer fee here where you can pay to, I don't know, to a club, to the county, and Brian Menton or Brian Fenton, the rhyming couplet here, can come and be a part of your team if they so wish. Brian Menton plays midfield for Meath and has got St Bridget's connections. So this is why he's bringing up the Menton situation in particular. If counties like Roscommon want to win an All-Ireland in my lifetime, these are the type of things we've got to think about. I'd love a generation of people to see Roscommon win an All-Ireland or any other county that has got that ambition and shows that ambition, and I think it can be done. Now, he talks about winning the Club All-Ireland with St Bridget's in 2013, how they had people from all over the country. Only 4 people who had a mammy or a daddy from the area on that team, he says, which I didn't actually realise. Think about that. And we're in a small pocket in South Roscommon, he says, so there was an awful lot of movement of those people to make that team. Now, a couple of the final parts here, he says, like Danny Murphy, the greatest footballer that ever played for Roscommon, is for Longford. And then he has, I don't think he had a deliberate swipe at Meath here, but if I'm a Meath supporter reading this, I'm not overly happy. He says, you think that can't happen, that the GAA can get eroded away. But just look at Meath now as an example. How many people in Meath actually support Meath? There's more people in Meath that support Dublin than actually support Meath. There's more people in Dublin now that support Dublin, but don't support the local club structure. That's not sustainable. It's also a little bit of a dig at those great club people who operate around Dublin City and Dublin County as well. This is fairly left field thinking, to say the least. You go first here in terms of your opinion, Adrian. I've got a few things to say as well.
There's so much in all of that. Danny Murphy, of course, who we went into detail on a couple of weeks back, and we should never let him mention, I don't think, from here on out of Sheahan Curran go without mentioning the name Rupert de Lacy Staunton. It should be, I think it should be a regular feature on the show, if I'm being honest. But I think there's a huge amount, I think, of interesting stuff about the dynamic of counties now and like how that's going to change during and post-COVID in terms of the movement of people. We are told that I was listening to a thing the other day that we're talking about the property market in Cork and never being so busy that, and I'm sure that's replicated around the country, that people are now interested in moving away from Dublin. What impact that has on the GAA specifically would be absolutely fascinating to see over the coming years. So there's definitely something in that, like that. There's a lot of Dubs living in Meath. He's 100% right about that. Are they invested or interested in the Meath club scene? Like Dean Rock, obviously the most talked about person in the GAA this week, obviously is a good example of somebody who could have easily gone one way or the other. So that's all very interesting. The draft, the transfer system, I'm not really that sure about it. I'm not really that sure how that specifically might work. The draft system, I think, is an interesting one. And I've given it a little bit of thought this morning. I'm sure this proposal is not without its flaws on, but the thoughts that I was having a little bit earlier was in relation to a draft system around the Sigerson Cup. So the proposition here would be that you would have a system where the best 15, maybe actually even 30, depending if finances would allow it, players in the Sigerson Cup are selected each season, each year, and those players are then put on a draft system for the various counties to play inter-county football, essentially, for a county that's outside your own for an agreed period of time. Like maybe that's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. I think 1 year is too short because you're not really getting that investment, I think, and then it's kind of over before you, like, it's easy to flit away a year. Yeah. I've been selected to play with Roscommon, not that interested, going to pick up my money and do it anyway. Whereas actually if it's a 2 or 3 year commitment, then that's an easier thing to do. Like if you were looking at doing 30 players and paying them 30k, it's about $1 million a year. Whether the GAA could subsume an amount like that, I suspect it's not beyond the realms of possibility. You would obviously have 3 years running at any one time, which would be £3 million. But it's not all the flow of money one direction.
Sorry, are you saying to pay the players?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So professionalism in the GAA needs
100%. Yeah. In this regard, yeah, it's not full professionalism, but I think that actually to do this, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to get buy-in from the players, right? And I think to do that, you probably have to pay them. I think that would serve another couple of purposes, which I'll come to in a minute. But as I said, it's like the streams, the revenue is not all one direction. It's not a case of just having to fork out for these players and there's nothing coming back. I think that by way of contract, if you're signing up to this, that there's commercial work that you would have to undertake on behalf of the GAA, which would be a revenue stream back in. I think that you can suddenly start to filter these players around things like the cool camps or clinics, like we've seen during the week, where they can charge 350 quid a pop or whatever it might be. So it's not all outgoings. There is the possibility of getting money back in. And then what you end up at the end of that is 2 or 3 years where players, and we're obviously talking about younger players here because they're coming through the Sigerson Cup, have gone off to do a John O'Shea on it and get a bit of experience at other counties. And so it's not a total loss for their native counties because they are coming back with a level of experience that maybe in a lot of cases they might not have gotten. People will always, in the counter argument to this, people will always use the examples like unbelievable players who have come through at a very young age and gone onto their county scene and been brilliant. But like more often than not, it's more of a trickle effect where the player takes a bit of time, is off the bench, and actually what we're suggesting here is that they go and get proper full game time at, I suppose, what we would describe as weaker counties. Players, as I said, would have to opt into it. So you're at that point doing away with forcing players. It's like if you want in, there's 20 grand or 30 grand on the table a year, you would have to commit to 3 years, and here are the obligations that come with that. So it's only players who are interested. A consequence of that is that we're nationally promoting amongst our youth third level education in a way that rugby does very successfully at the minute. So we're saying there's an incentive to go and study at third level, and obviously you can earn off the back of that for a number of years. It helps also as a consequence with the drain of players to Australia, because suddenly you don't have that pull and drag that we saw most recently with Colin McShane, and you don't have to have the Keystone Group, as we spent a week talking about earlier in the year, having to fly into the rescue to keep players like that here, that suddenly there is an incentive there to keep players in Ireland. And yeah, so that's kind of how I see the draft system working.
I applaud you on your ambitious thinking. That's certainly one thing. That I think that the idea that a county would let the players to one side for a moment. The idea that a county would stand over the fact that one of their promising minors goes to college and as a result of going to college can then play for another county. I think that would repulse pretty much every top tier county immediately. I think the idea that you have a youngster and you've seen Con O'Callaghan come up through the underage ranks. Jim Gavin's got his eye on him. He sees how good he is. He sees that he's strong. He's going to be able to turn into a good senior pretty much straight away. But he's going to UCD and he's playing for UCD and he's playing Sigerson Cup. Then he's gone. I think the idea that people would stand over that is impossible.
Here's the thing. Players have to opt in. You could just choose not to opt in.
So that means what happens is the players who play for the worst counties, like putting it bluntly here, the players who play for the worst counties will be the only ones who opt in, because all the players from Kerry and Dublin and Cork and hurling will want to play for their own county because they've got a chance of making it.
Yeah, no, look, you are going to have a certain number of players who fulfill that criteria. There's absolutely no question about it, and there's no getting around it, and you can't force players to do it, so you can't implement this as a mandatory thing. So you are accepting that there are a number of brilliant players who actually, if you were to draft that list of 15 or 30 players who are the best in the Sigerson Cup, they are just not going to partake, and you just have to accept that.
Well, you can't have
does that mean that the entire system doesn't work? I don't think so.
The whole point of a draft is to level the playing field. A draft will not level the playing field unless you've got the best young kids coming in, because even then
it will. It will help. It will help level the playing field. No question about it. There is absolutely the possibility and the reality that, you know, the David Cliffords or the Conor Callaghan's, like you've mentioned, are probably going to stay put, right? And that's the reality. So there are a certain number of players, but like I said when I was explaining it, you are going to be dealing with a number of players that aren't going to sign up. Does that mean that the entire thing is flawed? Like, look, I've spent 30 minutes this morning thinking about it. Are there flaws in it? I suspect there probably are. But does that, just because a tiny number of players at a small number of counties are going to opt out, does that mean that my well thought out draft system doesn't work? I refute that, I refute that strongly.
Oh God, I'm sorry, I just cannot see this working in any shape or form. Like I like the idea of exploring how do Gaelic games in a fantasy lands in 200 years, because it might take that long. How will that look in the professional era when that is actually the thing that occurs to the organisation? Is a draft the thing that will allow Gaelic games to turn professional, or will that be a prerequisite? I'm very interested in this conversation, don't get me wrong. I just think that you are saying that this is potentially a mid-term solution. Like, this is something that Shane Curran is saying this morning. Like, just for the record, like, in terms of the quotes that are printed in the Irish Examiner, like, I must admit, I must go back and listen to the full podcast. And apologies that Shane Curran has gone into great depth about his GEA draft idea here, but it's not really said in the quotes here in the paper this morning about what his real idea is for a draft. So I don't know what you've seen or like what you were comparing it to, but I genuinely think that your idea is mad. I think your idea is crazy. I just don't see how, if you are going to go to a draft system, that you're not going to have the best kids involved, that there's an opt-in system. And also, if you flip the table on this a little bit, what if you're a promising kid from Clare, a promising footballer from Clare? Say if you're playing with the Division 2 or below county, and you are the wunderkind of that county. Now, Clare would be, whatever, as I say, a Division 2 team. So they would be in the bottom half of the draft because they've made it to the last 12 of the All-Ireland. They've made it to round 4 of the qualifiers. Does that then mean that their promising kid goes first in the draft and then joins a Division 4 team, and that promising Clare footballer now plays for Waterford?
What it means in the main is that you're going to have a lot. So there's been a lot of the conversation that you have around Dublin in terms of the underage structure is that there are so many players who just haven't got a hope of playing intercounty football, no matter what happens. Like, they could make up the second best 15 in the country of players that we'll never hear about.
So is this a Dublin
thing? They're just never going to get the opportunity. So what it does mean is that you're going to, as a result, you're going to get a lot of players who will probably never get, even after their exposure at intercounty level, get next or near their own county panel. So in the main, what it means is that the most populated county in the country, with a fifth of the population, is going to, yes, there will be other counties who will feed into this. Of course there will. Your own will be one of those, given the conveyor belt that exists on there. But in the main, what you're going to have is a bunch of players who are never going to see intercounty football one way or the other, but are absolute quality players getting out to play in other counties for a number of years. And who knows what happens after that. If they are a player who becomes affiliated, as we're discussing about Roscommon here, and they know that their possibilities of Dublin after that are going to be limited anyway, they may end up staying on. So in the main, it's going to be a lot of players from Dublin filtering out around the country, and some players from Kerry. And there are going to be some other consequences for that, but it's not all give. If you are Clare, it's not all give. And you're also, the thing is, you're talking about Clare there. If they somehow end up, you're coming up with this fantasy situation where a underdeveloped county like Clare in terms of football is suddenly producing the best player in the country. I mean, I don't know what evidence you have for a situation like that, but in that instance, it's not as if the player is disappearing from the county and will never be seen again. He'll be back, and he could be 10 times the footballer when he comes back.
The closest comparison I can think is probably in the Premier League, where someone like Tammy Abraham goes out on loan to Aston Villa and then comes back to Chelsea and improves the player, if you want to give you that. But if I give you that, I'm going to have to take away. There's a text in here from Dave, a dub in Cavan. Not sure who this is.
I think I know what we're talking about here. Go on.
Mad stuff from Adrian here. What happens if it's Leitrim losing a player to Dublin for 3 years? How do you ensure the players return to his county after 3 years? How does a county like Carlow find 30 grand for a 19-year-old? This is crazy talk. Imagine a minor star from Leitrim going to UCD and being poached by Dublin for 30 grand for 3 years and then demanding that guy return to play for Leitrim, having broken into the Dub senior team.
Well, yeah, look, I think there are ways around that. First of all, it should be said that the funding of this does not come from the individual county. The funding of this has come centrally. That's why I was talking about the commercial. I actually think you could do this in a way that it washes his hands. Can you bring in 30 grand a year in to cover this person's the expense of this player? That's not an impossible task, I don't think. If you're talking about the elite of the country, I think you can put structures around that to easily get around that. And obviously you would also weight this. So if you're Dublin, who going to win the All-Ireland 15 years running, then sorry lads, you're 32nd pick here. So you're getting the worst of the best.
Yeah.
That's the way the draft would work.
Just to wrap up, we don't have time for any other stories. I just want to make one point on what Shane Curran is suggesting here, by the way, this idea of a transfer market. That's the draft conversation covered, the transfer market. To talk about the idea of paying Dublin 100 grand for Brian Fenton is frankly ridiculous. First of all, Dublin can say, no, we won't accept that transfer fee. Second of all, where is that money then going? Where is that money going to go? If we want to make this massive argument that inequity in the GEA is funded by all the cash going into Dublin, what will 100 grand then do? It will only create that inequity and make it even bigger, and it will fund. If you actually are of the school of thought that money is funding everything or is creating the Dublin behemoth, then what is going to happen with that money? It will only fuel that further. The idea then that other counties will be able to go toe-to-toe with some of the bigger counties gets even more ridiculous. But what if there's a transfer battle, Adrian? What if there's one player available? The smaller counties will get squeezed out by the more financially powered. Roscommon will have to run about 100 raffles for a house in London to be able to afford Brian Fenton. I think it's ludicrous. I think it's ridiculous. There's not a hope that something like this could work. The rich will get richer when you bring money into it, and a transfer market, surprise, surprise, involves a hell of a lot of cash. So I don't know. I think we do it to wrap.
Yeah, but hang on. You have spent your morning now putting two bullets and two ideas, and without actually offering anything positive in relation to it. And I would say that I would agree with you on that point. You can't have a transfer system, and my suggestion does away with any exchange of money between counties.
Okay, fair enough. You still have to pay the 30 grand to the player though. Right, let's finish up on the OTB Sports app this morning. You've got all the latest stories on your personalised home feed. You've got OTB Sports Radio where you can listen live to the show. The video tab has all the latest video from OTB Sports. And then there is our podcast network with over 40 new podcasts per week. One we're checking out this week is Andy Lee in conversation with Mickey Rourke. We are talking football next with David Meyler this morning, but first, John Giles told last night's OTB what Leeds United need to do in the transfer market to get ready for next season's Premier League.
Well, history has shown us, Nathan, of course, any team is going to do better in the second division. I'm calling it the second division, the lower level, of course, because you're playing against lesser players. But once you step up into the Premiership, obviously, you're playing with against far better teams, so you need to pick up yourself. So show us. Take Norwich for us, even Villa, the teams that came up last year. Norwich definitely. They were never going to spend money. They were going to do what they did, and if they go down, they'll take the parachute money and hopefully come back up again. That's what they intended to do. But Villa spent 140 million, and that was to improve the team. Like what we always say, anybody that goes up into the Premier has to improve their team. Now, in Leeds' case, it might not be the case, but what I see of it, I think they need to, especially get some forwards, goal-scoring forwards. That's my take on it. So you can get a manager who the Norwich manager has done extremely well in what was the old second division to get them up. But when they come up, they're playing against better players and they're going straight back down again, Nathan.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. If you're taking a model over the last few years, it has to be Wolves. Wolves improved their team when they were in the second division. So when they went up, they were capable of staying there, which they did. I think they finished 6th or 7th in the league. And there's a team who are looking now to hopefully, certainly looking at to qualify for the European competitions. League, You know, I think that's what you need to do. But what I see from Leeds, I'd be a bit worried for them in the sense, if their ambition is to sign Ibrahimovic and Cavani, I would worry for them.
Yeah, full piece with John Giles available as ever on the OTB Sports app. Right, it is the final day of the Premier League on Sunday and loads of great storylines to get stuck into. Delighted to say that David Meyler is with us. David, how are you getting on?
Good morning, Owen. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Let's look back on Wednesday night. First of all, Jordan Henderson lifting the Premier League trophy. Not a bad feeling, I'd say, to see your buddy lift it, do the Hendo shuffle and send Liverpool into ecstasy.
Yeah, like everybody who's like a Liverpool supporter would have been wondering, was he okay? Obviously, he picked up the injury, and then I'd spoken to him 3 or 4 days out, and he said, no, I think I should be okay to do it. And then I asked, are you going full JT with the kit? And he said, I'm not putting my shin pads on, but I'm putting the full lot on. And I said, you have to really, because for such an iconic moment, I said, you don't want to be standing there in your tracksuit lifting the trophy and that. So I said, like, as much as people like to take the mick out of John Terry, I think everybody in the same situation would have done the exact same. So, no, look, watching him lift it, tremendously proud of him, so happy for him. It's a huge honour. Like the 12 months he's had winning, you know, the Champions League, Super Cup, the World Club Cup, and then the Premier League, and to captain them and lift all the trophies is just phenomenal stuff, really.
What is the foundation of the resilience that exists in Jordan Henderson's mind to go from a place where that Liverpool team was roundly derided, I think, by a lot of people at the end of the Brendan Rodgers tenure, or at least during a period in that time? Like, you're just looking back on the Stoke 6-1 game 5 years ago, last month or the month before, and he's one of the only players still there. I think the only starter who's still involved with the squad from that day. Why is it Jordan Henderson that is the man that made that step up and is the man who's managed to hang around to get to this level?
Well, if I go back a long time ago when we played together at Sunderland, Dwight Yorke was there. And obviously Dwight Yorke is famous for playing for Manchester United, being involved in the treble-winning season in '99. A phenomenal player. But he used to always say it's easy to get to the top. The hardest thing is staying there. And I think that's, like, when you speak about Jordan, I think it's testament to his mentality. I know he has a lot of doubters. A lot of people think he's not great. Look, he's a superb footballer. Is he on the level of a Kevin De Bruyne? No. But is there anyone else in the world on that level who plays midfield? Probably not, no. But when you look at Jordan, it's a testament to his character, the type of person he is, the way he, pushes himself. You speak about the time with Brendan Rodgers, like when it looked like he was going to go to Fulham, but he, said, no, I'm not going. Knuckles down, puts his head down, keeps working hard, and just does the basics right and sticks the course. And then he reaps his rewards. You look at 2 years previous to when Brendan made him captain, he was nearly gone, and then he makes him captain. And then to go on, I think Jurgen Klopp has evolved him into an even better player and a better person. I think a lot of it stems from the manager now, but it's remarkable that, for anyone that's young, trying to, carve out a career in the game, he's the fella that you should look at, that, hard work and desire gets you a lot of the way.
Do you think that evolution will continue, David, like that? You talk about sort of him as a person, and we've all seen the evidence of that over the last few months, and the evolution of him. Like, he tends to get, you've hinted at it there, but that backhanded compliment of, he got the most out of his career kind of a thing, which is sort of serves a double purpose of saying that he's not great. He's turned 30 recently, and I just wonder about that evolution under Klopp. Like, how much longer can he be a force in that Liverpool midfield?
I think time catches up with all of us, but I still feel he has another 2-3 seasons left in him at that level. I certainly do. Now, you look at a Ryan Giggs who evolved his game, then you look at players like, even say someone like Steven Gerrard, who's at Liverpool previously, he evolved his game. I certainly think the way he conducts himself off the pitch, the lifestyle he lives, he does give himself the best chance He doesn't drink, doesn't go out. Like, he eats healthy. Even from when I first met him at 18, that's 12 years ago. He looks after himself even more now than he did then. So I'd certainly think, he's many seasons left at Liverpool as captain.
Was he nervous when you were talking? Because there was good shots of him before, during the game, obviously sat in the stands and like a kind of a nervous smile, and he was obviously getting a bit of ribbon from some of the lads around him about what he was going to do for the trophy lift. And that, was he nervous about it, excited about it?
No, I think look, you're excited about it. I imagine he had butterflies that, everybody who's young that plays football wants to win the Premier League. And then you go and you captain your team to win in the Premier League. I think, the excitement takes over. It's kind of like obviously they're playing Chelsea at the time, a very good team, in good form, coming off a huge result against United in the FA Cup, that he was probably desperate for the team to win, to kind of keep that high buzz around, the ground. Imagine if they had lost and then were presented the trophy, it wouldn't have been great. No, but it's full of excitement. You're getting to do something that, I think he's one of now 13 people who've lifted the Premier League title. So, he's put his name in the history books in Premier League. And then, of course, being the first Liverpool captain to do it. So the excitement would have been the whole way through. I don't think he'd have been nervous.
Is not drinking becoming a necessary step if you want to achieve big things in top-tier football, David? I mean, times have obviously changed. There's less people, people don't do it to the level they used to in terms of professional footballers. But it seems that the way recovery has been limited now with so many competitions, the summers are getting more and more packed with summer tours, that actually a little bit of downtime to go drinking for a while, it's just not possible as a modern footballer.
Well, I think if you look back to the early 90s when the Premier League first started, you'd have had a lot of British and Irish players playing. I think the Premier League has evolved. It's now global. You look at the different cultures. We have a lot of, say, Muslim players who do not drink at all. If you look back to Arsene Wenger's time when he brought in the French lads, that I think Arsene Wenger was probably the first to kind of change it with nutritionists, like keeping track of what players, were eating, etc., etc. I think it has evolved over time, but the good old Irish in me would say there's nothing wrong with, a few drinks on a Saturday night after you win a game. Of course, the times of going out till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and drinking heavily have gone. You can't afford to do it if you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, and the level that certainly Jordan and Liverpool are at. The games are all so big that you're expected to win and you're expected to put in a performance that you can't give people an excuse to nail you about. That's the way I'd probably look at it. But I don't see nothing wrong with, a drink here and there after to celebrate kind of a good result or a good performance. It's just obviously no one went to stop or, like that really.
One of the interesting offshoots of having no fans on the ground, as weird as it makes maybe the celebrations afterwards, you get to hear a lot of stuff that goes on the pitch and on the sideline. And I'm sure you may have seen the clip of Frank Lampard and Jurgen Klopp going at it for a couple of minutes on the sideline at some point or another. And part of me was thinking, fair play to Frank Lampard, and this is like lesson number one in the Jose Mourinho school of coaching, that, you give it a little bit on the sideline and sort of make your opposite number know you're there. But there was definitely a part of me that was thinking that maybe actually Frank Lampard, and he's still young in his managerial career, lost the run of himself a little bit, that he was sort of out of control a bit and was allowing himself to get brought into a situation that wasn't keeping his mind on the game or, a great message to necessarily send out to his players. What did you make of it all on the Lampard side?
I don't mind it. If you remember, BT Sport released a clip of, I think it was Mason Greenwood's second against Bournemouth, and I think it was Adam Smith had said something to Ramsdale in the goal, and then Ramsdale came out and he was effing and blinding. It's part and parcel of the game. I think, you touch on Lampard and Klopp. I think Frank was obviously kicking off about a foul that wasn't given and what have you. It is part and parcel of the game. You can talk about fellas certainly managers say aren't, they're probably taking their eye off the ball for a minute or two, but it's such a demanding job, and there's so much at stake that, he's showing that he cares and he's passionate. Yeah, you kind of he felt the Liverpool bench were being over the top, and then of course, after one of the goals, all the staff run out, which is a bit much, but it does happen. I do think now that there's no fans there and the noise is, I quite like it, being able to hear, because look, the amount of sledging that went on, on the pitch was remarkable, when I played. You look at even in rugby games, it's probably the exact same. It's everywhere, it's just, I don't think people expect it to be at the level it's at. I always say you can't understand the football banter unless you actually, you share a change room with a group of players, that it is cutthroat, it is ruthless. So I've no problem with it. Managers give and go. Like
you don't mind them getting involved with other managers and with players, David? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I have. Well, I should have known. That was an open-ended question. Even so, if you look back on my incident, there was a few things said in between that was never picked up. He made reference to me. I made reference to him, and then that's just the way. I think that's the way it is. You kind of. It's you want to show no weakness. You want to show no like that. I don't care about you. Do you know what I mean? I had something years ago. I played against Man City. I think I cleaned Gareth Barry out in a tackle, and he got up. And I told him where to go. And then I was thinking of all, like, this fella's played over, I don't know what is it, 500-600 times in the Premier League. I thought he could literally say anything to me. Like, he's won the Premier League, he's won FA Cups, he's played for England in a couple of major tournaments. But all he said to me was, "You're ugly." And I was looking at him kind of going, of all the things you could have said to me, that's what you've said to me. And I said, I'm not really bothered about that. So that's just your opinion. I was like, you could have hit me a bit harder, like, but it happens all the time, fellas. Do you know what I mean? Whenever there's a bad tackle, somebody will say something to someone. It's just
was part and parcel of the game. Few words a bit worse than that, or? Oh yeah, I've definitely.
Obviously, we're early in the morning here, so I can't really say too much. But yeah, look,
go for it.
No, no. But look, it's part and parcel of it. It happens in a GA pitch. You imagine, someone who's as passionate as Davy Fitz. You don't think he's holding his tongue, like, and I imagine he's effing and blind and have a cut off, players or
John Milan.
Yeah, John Milan, another one. Yeah, prime example. But that's the beauty of him, isn't it? I imagine. Like you would, if you look at the Gooch probably said nothing to no one ever, but I imagine a lot of fellas who were marking him probably tried to have a cut off him and try to get in his head, but it clearly didn't work.
I watched some of that again this morning. Steve Bruce was out afterwards and he was saying about he was glad it was you that was involved because you weren't going to be rolling around, and he said you were restrained enough to not punch him back. It looked at the time as if that might have been a fine enough line. You were eager to get at him.
Oh, I was, yeah. Like, obviously, when it all happens, then your emotions kick in, and if you look back at the video, like, I do cock my right hand, and it's Ahmed El Mohammadi kind of he just knocks me off balance. No, I'm not going to say I would have hit him or whatever, but I'd have probably tried to grip hold of him. But I think it's testament to my GA background, of playing all the way up to minor before I moved to England, that like I was like, I can't be dropped to the floor here by an old fella. Like I said, it won't go down. And I said, my dad's in the crowd as well. I said, like, things are running through my head at the time. Whereas if I go off the pitch here and I go to meet my dad after, and the first thing he'd say, regardless, I know we got beaten 4-1 or whatever, but he'd have just gone, "You're gone soft, you boy. I can't believe this dropped you." It would have been. But even if you look at after then, Pardew goes away, and Alan Pardew's assistant at the time was John Carver. He came all chirpy, and like I remember I turned to him and I said, "I'll finish you in the tunnel, you little midget." That's what I said to him. Probably can't repeat what I said to Pardew at the time, but yeah, it's part and parcel of it. Emotions run high, like, and I'm currently in the process of doing my A license, and the other day we had a fantastic presentation by Paul Ozam, who's a tutor, and obviously he's the Ireland under-16 manager, and it was his presentation was on sideline behaviour, and then you look back at different moments and different things. It was really interesting, like, and obviously as I evolve in my road to management, I'll have to check a few things I do, and I'm learning a lot from it.
Can I just add, I watched the his apology afterwards, in inverted commas, felt like the greatest non-apology of all time. If I had him.
It wasn't an apology, and he never. I covered Hull v Chelsea in the FA Cup last season, and obviously Jake Humphrey asked me about it and whatever, and I said, Alan Pardew never apologised. Now, I've told the story a few times. I might have even told the lads on Off the Ball, but I had a phone call the following morning, and it was, hello, David, this is Chief Inspector such and such from Hull Police Station. And I said, yeah, good one. Like, I thought it was one of the lads ringing me up for a wind-up, and I hung up, and then the phone rang again, same thing. It was only the club secretary of Hull that rang me and said, no, Dave, this is the police. Do you want to press charges? And I was like, no. I said, look, it's nothing, like, do you know what I mean? But I could have proceeded, you know, to obviously press charges and go after him. But no, I wouldn't say it was a headbutt, like, but, you know, he could have had the decency to acknowledge that, like, I didn't roll around, you know, the floor crying. I didn't make a big scene of it. I let it go. His secretary wrote a letter that he signed, but that was like the interview he did, which is a token. It was nothing, like, do you know what I mean?
He said he was. I was trying to push him away with my head, is what he was saying afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Look, each their own. I've moved on from it. Do you know what I mean? I don't really. Like, it's 6 years ago. You know what I mean? People still talk about it, still bring it up. Even if you watch Match of the Day there, they did, you know, during lockdown, they did one of them top 10 bizarre moments, and I think I was voted in at number 2. So.
But the thing is, it just was so mad. And, like, when you look at the record of Alan Pardew, we'll move on from it now, but, like, he's got this record of. We were sort of half joking about it earlier on, that, like, the list of people that he's had Barney's with in the sideline are like this list of old men like Pellegrini and Wenger, Martin O'Neill and you. But it was just so wild. But.
Did he have an argument with Martin?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I'm not surprised Martin didn't ring me and say put him in the ground. Yeah.
It's interesting when Lampard talks about giving it all that, giving it the big un. Like, I think the biggest of the big uns was Alan Pardew dancing in the FA Cup final when they took the lead against Manchester United and then ended up getting beaten. Like, is that something that really winds you up as a player when you see the opposition giving it the big un? Is that a thing? Is like Lampard's anger and his fury midweek, is that commonplace in football?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Like, you touched on the dance. Like, I remember when Punchin scored, and, like, you're thinking, steady yourself, because you're playing Manchester United. You know, they've got some exceptional players on the pitch, like that. You know, I don't know. I think Punchin scored after about 25, 30 minutes. Like, it wasn't as if he scored in the last minute that, like, you've more or less won it. Like, you're just asking for it to come back and bite you in the arse. Like, but I think. Like, you know, obviously Frank has a pop off Jurgen, and obviously I saw Nathan talking to Mark Lawrenson this morning. He does have a touch of arrogancy, but I suppose you look at all the greats, Sir Alex, you know, Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, they all have that touch of arrogance, and I think you do need that. Like, Frank will certainly have a touch of it from his playing career that he's going to take into managing. I think that's the edge he has. I've played under managers that are super nice, and sometimes it doesn't really work. You need to have that bit, something bit different. I think when you talk about giving it the big in, certain lads react differently to it. I'd strive to kind of beat you then, or, like, you know, take on the challenge. Other lads might kind of go, yeah, I'm out of my league here. I can't deal with someone like him. I loved it. Like, if somebody gave it the big in, I'd be like, yeah, I've marked your card now. I'm coming after you.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, like, nobody should get too precious about it. Like, I think there's a necessary arrogance that's required. And, like, at the time, I think it's kind of surprising to everybody to hear what Frank Lampard is saying. But it's only surprising because we don't ever get to hear this. Managers aren't mic'd up, and we don't get to hear it when there's a full stadium. So that's why this is an outlier, I feel. That I think this is more commonplace than perhaps we realise on the outside looking in. Just one thing I wanted to ask you about, David, before we wrap up is just given the magnitude of Sunday, not necessarily in terms of the Champions League places, but in terms of the relegation battle, it's going to be an unbelievable final day. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on what those dressing rooms, those three dressing rooms in particular, are going to be like for Watford, for Villa and for Bournemouth going into the final day of the season, knowing that your Premier League survival is on the line? Is it nervousness? Is it a worry about your livelihoods? Or how do those dressing rooms tend to operate on a week like this?
Oh, it's tough. It's hard. I had a similar situation with Hull in 2012 where we were playing the last game to get promoted, and we were playing Cardiff, who were champions. Like that's if you look back, that's a famous day in Championship history, because I don't know if you know, all the games kick off, but I think it was one of the Watford were third, we were second, and there was only a point between us. Watford were playing Leeds, we were playing Cardiff, who were already champions. Watford goalkeeper got injured in the warm-up, so I believe they had to get a young kid from the stand who'd been released during the week to go on the bench. Then the game kicked off or whatever. Almunia was in goal for Watford. He got injured after about 15 minutes, so they had to bring the kid on, who ended up making two mistakes for the goal. So like tensions are always running high. And if you look at the Premier League, I think going through the change rooms, I think Watford, I don't know the inside story in Nigel Pearson and what actually happened to why he was sacked. You know, he took over at Christmas and he'd done a fantastic job. Then he gets sacked. I know they played Man City, which is a very, very difficult game. Like, now they're going into their final game against Arsenal. You're thinking their manager's been sacked. They've just taken a heavy defeat. Do you know what I mean? They'll be feeling the pressure a lot more than, say, an Aston Villa, who had a huge result against Arsenal. Like, they'll be feeling, you know, they're going to West Ham, that they can get a result. West Ham, I think we're done now. So Aston Villa will be in, spirits should be high and knowing it's in our hands. And then like Bournemouth, just like nothing can seem to go right for Bournemouth. It's almost as if they'll be pulling their hair out. You know, they're playing Everton away, so like that's another tough game. And you look around the changing rooms, I feared for Villa. I just felt that they couldn't really keep a clean sheet, and they never looked like scoring. I know they beat Arsenal 1-0 or whatever, but you'd have to, on the basis of the last game week performances, you'd have to probably back Aston Villa to stay up. As well with their fixture playing West Ham, who might have just, you know, feel like we're done. Like, let's just get this season off and we can focus on next season. The change rooms are going to be, look, boys are fighting for their careers, they're fighting for their livelihoods. There's so much involved that people don't see, that if a club is relegated, if a club is relegated, people lose their jobs. That's not like players, that's, you know, staff in the stadiums, people who work on the training grounds. There's so much around it. And then, of course, you know, players probably end up having 50% wage cuts, 40% wage cuts. So there's a lot at stake. And it is a nervous time, and there's a lot of pressure involved. So, you know, it's a case of who can put that aside for 90 minutes and actually put in a performance and get a result for their team.
What's the ecstasy like when you actually do survive? I suppose 2014, when you stayed up with Hull City, it wasn't a final day of the season sort of job. I think you did it with a month to spare, but still, I'd imagine the elation is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think looking back on that season, we had played Fulham away. We were 2-0 down, came back and drew 2-2. Obviously got a point. Shane Long scored late on, but like we had felt at that moment, we're not at the magic 40 mark, but we're high enough that we're okay. I think we had 6 games left, and we felt, you know, we'll get a result along the way, whether it be another draw or maybe get a win. But we actually went and lost 6 in a row. We lost our final games. It was only because of the FA Cup run that there was kind of like, we still had the buzz. If we hadn't gotten that result against Fulham, it might have been totally different. But when you stay up, it's just knowing that I can go and I can enjoy my summer. I can go and I can relax. A lot of our lads would have gone playing internationals, but you go on a different form. You go, you know, it's always interesting. I always look at this when you go and you meet up for the international summer games after, whether it be a major tournament or friendlies or competitive fixtures, that like you have to get a feel that I could have been at the time relegated with Hull. You look at the Sheffield United boys, could have been promoted. You could have had, you know, different lads who are at a different team have just stayed up. That there was such a mixed feeling of, obviously, when you went into those games. You know, there was times like We've obviously seen a lot of Irish lads being promoted over the last few years. So it's always interesting, like, and the joy that when you stay up is incredible, because then once the fixture list comes, you're looking for your Liverpools, your Man Uniteds, your Man Cities, when are you playing them, rather than, I've said this before, it's no disrespect to the Championship, but you don't get that excited looking at when you're playing whoever in the Championship. I won't mention teams in case anyone takes disrespect, like, but there's a different buzz. Do you know what I mean? And then you're looking, like, you look at Chelsea, they've signed Werner, Ziyech, it looks like they're about to sign Havertz. Then you're like, oh, I can't wait to, test myself against these fellas. The club are spending 40, 50, 60 million on a player. Like, I know there's just a larger buzz in the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, David, enjoy the final day of the season. Adrian, you got one more there, I think.
Just very quickly, David, and you're going to think I'm Alan Pardew crazy, or I'm not. What did your dad say to you afterwards?
No, let me just. All he said was, "Well done," because I didn't throw myself to the floor. And then he just went, "No press."
Right.
He said,
"Stay
"No
away
press."
from it." Is the cork coming out in him?
Yeah, he said, "Stay away from Owen, Nathan, and all them." That's what he was saying. He just said no, because you at that age, obviously I said 6 years ago, I'd have been 25. You know what I mean? You're young. You're like, obviously it's a huge incident in the Premier League history, and then somebody's going to go, "Oh, David, how was the game?" And then you thought, "Well, let's just get on to this." And I'd have had 5, 6, 7, 8 questions like about the incident. So he just said no press, and then he hammered me for our performance and my performance in the game, which was
business as usual then.
Yeah, business as usual. Yeah.
Listen, David, it's been great chatting to you again this morning. Enjoy the final day of the season. We'll chat to you again soon.
See you later, guys.
David Meyler there on the line. Great memories there. What an incredible moment that was, actually. An insane moment with Alan Pardew. Well, how long ago was that, Adrian, at this point? You were doing a lot of reading on it?
6 years.
6 years.
6 years, yeah.
Right. Plenty still coming up this morning on OTB AM. CJ Stander joins us a little bit later on, and we'll be looking back at Dublin's Mt Rushmore with Adrian next. First, though, we want to tell you about a brilliant new series that is live right now on OTB Sports. Andy Lee Meets is brought to you by SEAT, and our first episode with Mickey Rourke is available to watch or listen to right now over on the OTB Sports app. We'll be back right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
I always took the acting very personal, like whoever I'm working with.
Yeah.
Like my mentality, it's like, no, it's me against you, and I'm going to take you to school. That's why when De Niro and I worked together, it didn't go very good.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite films, actually, Angel Heart.
Yeah, but he wanted me to bend down and kiss his ass, and he met the wrong guy.
Because I read something about it. The director, Alan Parker, he said that it was like a sparring session when you two would share scenes.
You know what? He's a and a crybaby. He's a and a crybaby.
Did you ever talk boxing with De Niro? Considering Raging Bull?
Raging my oh, God. No, he's a
Early in the conversation, you talked about, growing up, tough upbringing with 4 older stepbrothers who are all tough on you. Do you feel like...
Two of them were all military boxing champions. They were real tough.
Would you feel like that adversity growing up, that hard upbringing, would you have had the success you've had in life, in boxing and in movies, without it?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's like when I was doing the movie with De Niro. And he kept crying about what I was doing to Alan Parker, right? There was a moment where he bitched a little too much. And then I remember, I didn't lose my temper or anything. I looked at him right in the eyes. And I looked right through him. And I was thinking to myself, listen, you ain't been where I've been. You haven't walked in my shoes. There's no way you're going to win this. There's no way. You'd have to kill me, wake me up, and kill me again. So, you know, when I do the acting, I do make it personal.
Yeah.
And it's like, but acting is very much like a fight. If you're fighting a guy that's physically strong, like a big left hooker, that's got power over you, you don't go out and try to match him with power. You finesse him and let him shoot his load, and then you start picking him apart, as you would do at this camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's the same way. You gotta have a game plan. If he goes this way, it's like if you say you're going to kill somebody. I've never heard, like a lot of people, gangsters, and I've been around a few, scream, "I'm going to kill her." They just say it quiet, like, we're just going to take care of that. Quietly, we're going to take care of that. They don't have to scream and yell it. And it's like acting, it's like you make choices. How, if something's supposed to be real angry, I don't listen to what the writer says. I make my own choice, how I would handle it under similar situations.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
You wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998, if you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past, and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Yeah, you're welcome back. 9:22 on this Friday morning. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Adrian, Mickey Rourke, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared would you be, or even just meeting the man, of the damage he could do to you? He's a tough guy, and I'd say even Robert De Niro probably cowered in fear a little bit.
The Robert De Niro story is unbelievable. I listened to that while out for a run and nearly had to stop running. It was raging my bleep was the expression that particularly got me. You wouldn't want to get in the ring with him, really, but one of my main thoughts. Like Andy was talking to me, did a little bit of a tour towards the end of the chat. The full piece is up on our YouTube channel and on OTBsports.com. He did a bit of a mini tour of his house. It was kind of grainy, so it was hard to figure out exactly what was going on. But there was a punch ball there. What do they call the one that hangs from the roof? And he was talking about that. And I've started following him on Instagram. And he was on the other night going through a bit of a routine. You really just would not want to be getting in a ring with the man. He's an interesting character.
Yeah, to say the very least. Brilliant actor as well. So this is usually the time every Friday morning, Adrian, where we put aside 40 minutes of our time to delve into the beauty of a different county in terms of their sporting prowess, and we learn something new generally about it. We don't have a county this morning, Adrian. We're done. We've managed to get through all 32 Mt Rushmores. We actually did 34 of them because we did an extra 2 for Dublin. We did the North and the South. It's emotional saying goodbye to this. Like, I mean, the amount of great things that happened from the series it has been noted, but more notably, the amount of terrible things that have happened as a result of the series is probably more heightened. There was a piece done up on Off the Ball on OTBsports.com yesterday. Sheahan, the 12 of the best, Dublin's Mt Rushmore absentees. And the 12 names on the list of people who did not make the Dublin Mt Rushmore is John Giles, Eamon Coughlin, Robbie Keane, Ken Doherty, Stephen Cluxton, Kevin Heffernan, Liam Brady, Stephen Roach, Johnny Sexton, Kevin Moran, Brian O'Driscoll and Damien Duff. Did Dublin end up being the most egregious, in your opinion?
There was 2 counties. The one thing was, over the entire thing, there was 2 counties that everybody had an opinion about. People dipped in and out of the other ones. The controversial decision here, somebody left off there, a name you'd never heard of, like Rupert de Lacy-Staunton over there. There was a lot of that sort of stuff going on, but there was two counties that everybody had an opinion on from day dot, before, during and afterwards, and that was Dublin and Cork. Everybody had strong opinions about them, given that they're the most populated. Maybe that is quite natural, and maybe given the number of absolute legends that they had, maybe that's also quite natural, and none more so than Dublin, I think. So yeah, and it was always going to create controversy, wasn't it? Like, no matter who was picked on the final four, there was always going to be people left off it that really should be up there. I would have definitely a slight... And by the way, you say this is the end of Mt Rushmore, we'll never hear from it again. There have been calls, nationwide calls, on for, a resurrection of this in a heightened format, maybe provincial, maybe onto a national level. I think there is more debate in Mt Rushmore yet. But I wouldn't fully agree with the Dublin one yesterday. I think that, there's a tension between Kevin Heffernan, Jim Gavin and Stephen Cluxton seem to be kind of what it boils down to, which, as you say, it seems slightly mad. But it's, if you're going to go with one GEA person, which is what I would have done in my selection, I think it's got to be Heffernan.
Why?
I think that anything else is... I see the case for all of them, but for me, Heffernan changed it, and changed it in a way that I know it was supposed to have a legacy that we would never see the end of, in a way that we're looking at this current Dublin team at the minute. But I just think he changed the game in a way that, it was a refresh by the time Pat Gilroy came in or Jim Gavin came in. That was a reboot of what had gone on previously. Whereas Heffernan just utterly changed the game in Dublin and made the game become popular in a way that got the interest of people like Jim Gavin, and probably to a lesser degree Stephen Cluxton, because he probably would have washed over him if he was even around at that point. So yeah, that would really be the reason for it. Would I stand absolute steadfast over that in a way that dismisses the cases? And I know you're very strong on Stephen Cluxton. You couldn't dismiss the cases for any of the rest of them. But for me, Heffernan, for that reason, would have got the nod.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Now, one of the most pointless things you can say in these conversations is kind of paying tribute to the people who didn't get on and say, I can see why that person isn't on my Mount Rushmore or whatever, because you can see why 25 people could possibly be making this one. When you talk about changing the game, is modern Dublin not that exact thing? They changed the game, except for one thing. They had greater success than any team Kevin Heffernan had. I accept the fact that he's a complete icon, but is the success and the medals thing not the key point here, because that is almost the tiebreaker? I get the cultural impact that Kevin Heffernan's teams would have had, that he as an individual would have had, and an unbelievable man by all accounts, and I will never be able to argue against that, because I never met the man and I didn't live during that time, and I would bow to anybody who has that extra knowledge. But my take on it would be that the modern Dublin team have also changed Gaelic football. The modern Dublin team have also captured the imagination of a lot of people who aren't ordinarily involved or interested in Gaelic games. You may call them bandwagoners, but I definitely think that there was a lot more people interested in Gaelic games as a result of this 5-in-a-row Dublin team, which I don't think we actually quite appreciate just yet, because the era isn't over. And they won 5 in a row. I think you're right, Owen, is the thing. A bandwagon thing annoys the hell out of me. You don't fill Croke Park on All-Ireland final day unless you have some bandwagoners. So exactly, people need to get over themselves in that regard. But you're right. But on all of that. But for me, the one thing that little grain of rice on is that I don't know. You can't say with certainty, but I don't think that what's happening now with Dublin happens without Hefo. And that's the question. That's an impossible one to argue for sure. And I'm probably operating off the fact that Dublin would have arrived on the scene eventually, or there would have, they'd obviously won All Irelands before that period as well. And there's kind of a deeper cultural ingraining of Gaelic games in the city as a result of what he did. So it's impossible to disagree with that. But just by the laws of probability, Dublin probably would have come good. There would have been a golden age for Dublin eventually.
At some point, but
that's me being extremely devil's advocate. I accept
that. I think there's a clear thread there. And on the success point, because it's an interesting one, I would also never really subscribe to success being the key. The transient nature of the nominees, or the ones who were eventually carved into the mount, was really the thing for me. And I think Heffernan massively ticks that box. And I think that, like, if you were going for success, I would have had Paul McGrath up there, as he is. He is up there, and I think, like, the reason for that, because there's, like, unbelievable cases for John Giles, particularly, and for Liam Brady, and maybe for Kevin Moran, because there was a transcendent nature there as well. But I just think culturally, Paul McGrath was such an icon, in a way that, like, you could talk to people about Paul McGrath who know nothing about sport, in a way that I'm not sure that the same thing really applies for. It doesn't, is the point, for some of the other names that were mentioned, you know. So, and maybe you'd have to accept there might be a bit of recency bias about that as well. But I'd have Paul McGrath there. I'd have agreed with the Padraig Harrington one. I like that bit of a spread as well that it gives. I think what he did for golf at a place and time, like the conversation came up about, there are better golfers on the island. Of course, there are more successful golfers on the island. Absolutely, there are. Not many of them, but there are. But again, it was like a place and time for. John made the point well that, like, he represents Dublin. That's what he did. And my last one would have been Brian O'Driscoll. Like, I think, how have we forgotten Brian O'Driscoll?
Well, he wasn't forgotten. Let's make that very clear. Brian O'Driscoll was not forgotten. There was a debate had, and it was decided that Brian O'Driscoll would not be on the mountain, and that was Brian Kerr's decision.
I don't know how we've forgotten.
He wasn't forgotten.
Honestly, he's forgotten. He's not up there. He's going to be forgotten. It's like eating bread is soon forgotten. And what Brian O'Driscoll did for rugby in this country, and, like, the point has been made that it's an elitist sport and all that stuff. But I mean, I think that Leinster themselves have proven over the last number of years that that's not fully the case. Maybe historically it was. And it's easy for me to make the case of Brian O'Driscoll because he works with us, and it'll sound good, but I 100% believe he should be up there.
Does he then defeat everybody else in the conversation? Sorry, what you need to do here, what I want you to do is, like, where does Brian O'Driscoll then come in terms of importance of those four? So, like, is he your fourth name in? By the way you're talking here, but by the way you're talking, it seems like this is an undeniable fact that he needed to be the first name up on the mountains.
The first name could possibly be Paul McGrath. I'm not sure. Jesus, to get into a rank of the four is an altogether different and more difficult conversation to have. Like, it's probably Paul McGrath in that he's held at the bosom of the nation in a way that we all care deeply for him, whether you're into sport or not. And I'm not sure there are many other people that we spoke about. I'm not sure there's anybody else that we spoke about on all of the Mt Rushmores that fulfills that criteria of the people, the love that exists for Paul McGrath. Like, I think that he outstrips everybody that we've ever discussed on the Mt Rushmores. I'm trying to rack my brains now at the various counties to think for anybody else who would fulfill that criteria. So he's probably number one. But I would have taken Jim Gavin off the mountain, and I would have taken Michael Carruth off the actual selections that went up.
Yeah, fair enough, I think. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I think that's actually fair enough in a lot of what you're saying there. Like, I think more so on the Jim Gavin thing, I think people who want to make the Heffernan over Jim Gavin case, like, I think that's probably fair enough. For me, it's Cluxton over Gavin that I would have gone for, but Gavin probably number 3 after the first two. So I'm with you on that. The Michael Carruth thing, though, I'm interested that you said that. Like, I mean, I'm sure you're, like, what age were you during his gold medal run? Like, Stephen Doyle, when he was talking about it, paints this as a Dublin boy who saw this as kind of a variation of the Italia 90 vibe in 92. That's an important thing for anything. And like, maybe we're getting too caught up in the fact that we're not from Dublin and we are trying to connect all of these moments with what they did to the national consciousness. And of course this was a big event for Ireland, but I really got the sense after listening to Stephen during the week that Michael Carruth's gold medal was a particularly big deal for those from Dublin.
I think that, like, being from the county that I'm from, Westmeath, like, you had an ingrained natural hatred for all things Dublin that we never really had, is the, you know, particularly on that, like, he, you know, I could understand why Dublin people looked at his, I was like 15 at the time, And maybe, people from Dublin would have looked at that and gone, oh, look at him representing Dublin. I never had that thought. It was representing Ireland. And, I'm not going for 1 second, to diminish the achievements of Michael Carruth, absolutely phenomenal.
That's always the first
stuff.
phrase when somebody is about to diminish the achievements of somebody.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to say any more than that because, the thing is, by the same token, I'm diminishing the unbelievable achievements of John Giles and of Liam Brady and of these absolute greats. It's not to say because you're putting somebody else up there. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. I haven't chosen the we can't remember them excuse, so they shouldn't go up there, or they're still playing excuse, so they shouldn't go up there. I just think the culture. How culturally transcendent were they? You accept that they're in the conversation. And then the criteria for me after that is how culturally transcendent were they, and that's the main factor for me.
Well, my criteria for selecting my Mount Rushmore was, will they be remembered in 100 years' time? And I think, to be honest with you, I nailed it. Let's face it, that was the criteria that everybody should have used. But look, we had a few renegades.
You went for 4 GA players essentially.
GAA. Never say the phrase GA in my company ever again. A successful series, all told, to a certain extent, except if you're from Waterford or Kilkenny or Westmeath. Kildare was a bit of a screw up. Mayo, the list really does go on in terms of a lack of success for your county.
Let's remember Mayo.
Right, it is 9:36 on this Friday morning, and we spoke with Ireland and Munster rugby player and Hellbent Boerewors brand ambassador CJ Stander yesterday after it was announced that Hellbent, along with 5 other brands, have secured a contract listing in all 142 Aldi stores nationwide through the Grow with Aldi programme. Have a look. OK, delighted to say that we have got Munster and Ireland back row CJ Stander with us. How are you getting on, CJ?
Hi, yeah, not too bad. Training hard, getting stuck into pre-season again after a few years where I haven't had a proper pre-season, so it's going well.
Very good. So you're promoting the fact this week that Hellbent Boerewors are securing a contract with Aldi. It's going to be available in stores all around Ireland. So what is Hellbent, but more importantly, what is Boerewors? And I presume I've absolutely destroyed the pronunciation of that word.
Actually, not too bad. It's called Boerewors. You're not too bad. You need to say it a very aggressive way, the proper South African way if you speak Afrikaans. But so Hellbent is a company started by Louis Ludik and Skalk van der Merwe, and we joined up and we started producing meat products. Our main thing is Boerewors. It's actually just sausage, beef sausage that is it's a high source of protein, very healthy, not a lot of fat in it, and we're making other products like hamburger patties, meatballs. So those are three main things, and the biggest thing for us was just to we made it for Skalk anyway made it up north for a few friends, and they actually enjoyed it. So we thought that we might just see if we can sell some of it, and Aldi gave us a great opportunity with Aldi to get on the shelves for the competition we won for a year, So it's been a great success so far, and we're actually looking forward to seeing where this can go.
So you're obviously a bit of a meat aficionado. When you moved to Ireland, are you impressed? Are you disappointed by the quality of our meat here?
No, I think the meat is exceptional. I think it's some of the best beef I've ever, especially while working with beef, is some of the best beef I've had in my life. So our main thing was to produce locally. Get Irish beef, and the only thing we outsource from South Africa is the spice that is in the meat and the sausages. And we were trying to mix the two cultures and the quality of the products we got here in meat, and get it out there so we can get the people behind it and actually taste and see what we grew up with as kids.
So talk to us a little bit about South Africa then. You've been down there during lockdown.
Yeah, I was in just before lockdown. We as a family decided that we wanted to get back closer to our family, and just in case something happened, luckily nothing close to us happened, touch wood, and we just wanted to be close to them. So yeah, we went down there and had a great 6 weeks on the farm. I could put my hand to the farming again, and I quite enjoyed that. And I spent some time with my family-in-law. So it was great. Except for the COVID, and for us it worked out quite well. We could spend some time with the families, something that we didn't really get in the last 8 years. Good family time, and we have the little girl, and she could spend time with the grandparents. So that was amazing to see her grow and them fall in love with her.
Which is more stressful for you and stressful on the body, a pre-season training session with Munster or a day on the Stander farm down in South Africa?
No, surely the farm. I just got back to pre-season, and I actually enjoy it thoroughly. Putting in some hard work again, and especially now with the COVID, with the regulations, training is short and sharp. I'm home at sometimes around 11, and on the farm I woke up at 5 and went to bed at 11 at night. So it's not a lot of rest, and there's a lot asked for you on the day on the farm in South Africa.
What are you doing on the farm down there then that has you up at 5 and in bed at 11? That's pretty hefty labour.
Yeah, so we produce vegetables. That's one of our main ranches, but we also have a dairy. So a normal day starts with collecting the cows at 5 and starting to milk them till around 7, 7:30, and then back into the fields on the farm for the vegetable side of it, and then finish that around 4 o'clock back to the dairy, and that process just goes on for every day, the whole year, non-stop, 7 days a week. So I feel that my brother and my dad actually they work hard. They can say they work hard.
How does that feel for you mentally then, to not be thinking about rugby for that period of time? Granted, the body's working hard, but the start of this season, CJ, was Japan. It was the Rugby World Cup. It feels like years and years and years ago at this point, but I'd assume on a mental level, having that break, being able to plug out from thinking about rugby all the time was a huge boost to you.
Yeah, mentally it was massive. I think if you're what happens with playing international and for your club, you play week in and week out. You never get a break where you can actually switch off, because normally you get your 4 or 5 weeks off, and your first 2 weeks is just taken to travelling and seeing family, for me anyway, and then it's just back into work you have to do. So I took a proper 4 weeks off, something I haven't done in a long time. Mentally, it was important for me just to reset the mind, and then physically my body needed a break, even if I wanted it or not. Small niggles that I've been coming along with since 2017, 2018, I could really heal up and my body return to its natural shape again, so I think it's ready to take a bang again for the next few years.
You mean returning to its natural shape in terms of a clean bill of health, or do you mean that you've fluctuated weight, or what is the natural shape you refer to there? No, just being able to walk around, feeling 100%, get out of bed and not worried if the back's going to be tight or something's going to be tight, and walk up straight. That is one of my main things. How many days do you wake up with that worry that you might not be able to walk straight? No, in the last few years I've been quite on top of my rehab, and I've actually started doing a lot of reformer Pilates work to just keep the body straight and mobile. But for me, the biggest thing is just the back tightening up every morning. And that was before, I say a year ago, that would be every morning. Just waking up and not sure if my back's going to be stiff or not, and if I'm going to be able to walk up straight firstly, and then be able to train 100%, because that's what I personally want to do, is train 100% every week and then make sure I'm ready for the weekend. So that was a big thing for me a few years ago, but now last few years, last year anyway, I've been on the good side of the stiffness and the aches. Right, okay. Just back on that mental level of things then, does it feel good for you to have had the opportunity to step out of the spotlight as well over the past few months? Because I guess being an Irish international, there is quite an amount of attention on the team. It was mid-Six Nations that coronavirus hits this country. It is in the middle of one of the times of the year where you are going to be on the back pages of the newspapers. The Six Nations wasn't going amazingly well. There were some up points for sure. The England game, perhaps the low point of this year's Six Nations. Was it good to not have that attention on you for a little while?
Yeah, it's something that I could control. It's not just out there, everything sports-wise on the back of the page. You just said it, and it was great. I think biggest thing for me is not checking my phone the whole time. My screen time went down, and I could be on the farm. I could be. There was no one came in because of the virus. I could be inconspicuous for weeks on weeks. So it was actually we flew back and I finished my quarantine. It was actually. When I was back in Limerick, it was actually weird when someone came up and asked for an autograph and a picture. It felt like the first time again, almost, So it's good to take that break as well, I think it's a thing that happens with the game, and it is important as well. I think as rugby players and as sports people, that you get put on a pedestal and you have to. That happens, and you have to take that with the game. And it's great, it's good to be someone's role model, hopefully, or just someone that someone can look up to, or someone that someone enjoys seeing, and that happens with the game. And if I can make it child's day, then that's awesome. But it was good to be on a farm, just being myself, and wearing old dirty clothes for 2 days in a row and do my thing,
Can I ask you then, you mentioned trying to cut down on your screen time then. I presume as somebody who plays at an international level test rugby, that is something that you really have to be careful of, because you can turn on Twitter one day and anybody can be in touch with you, abusing you about your performance or anything like that. Is that something that you've been conscious of in recent times, trying to cut down on not what you're putting out and actually typing into your phone, but also what you're reading and what's coming in?
Yeah, I think it's the mind is a thing that, as good as you train it or try to train it, it's going to look for negative stuff. Doesn't matter what platform you use. You always want to see what people think of you for some reason. I don't know. That's just a human being way, I think, of these days anyway, of looking at stuff. So it is important to not guard yourself from things like that, but I feel if I don't go look for it, then it's probably not going to follow me. It's going to be out there. But I think you surely need to make sure that if you do something or say something, that you do it in the right way, in the right manner, and surely you have your views and your opinions, and you want to share stuff with people, but you need to make sure you do it in the right way, because people are going to have opinions, and that is fair. Everyone has an opinion, and the biggest thing is if you want to use it and put it out there, you need to be able to handle what comes your way, good or bad.
Has there ever been a period in your career when you haven't been able to handle that, when the criticism would get you down?
I've probably when I was a lot younger, I think over the years, certain situations shaped me into or helped me grow in that perspective, with working with criticism and dealing with it, So I've been disappointed with stuff that has been said or been said towards my way, but dealing with it, it's like, it is an old saying, it's like water off a duck's back. You can't let those stuff sink in, because it gets rooted, and then problems start occurring in that sport, So you need to, for me, again, if I say something or I do something, then I take the consequences, good or bad, and if I put it out there, that I make sure that I think about what I'm doing, and what's the consequence going to be.
You've mentioned that you're back in training with Munster over the last few weeks, CJ. How has that been? I presume that there's no contact yet, or is that starting to come back in now?
No, it's been great, being back. I think it's like any person going back to any job, you actually start missing doing your thing, your routine. For me anyway, I think as rugby players, we like having a routine, so it's been great being back in the gym. The social distancing and all the rules are out there. I must say it's been unbelievable, the stuff we had to do and what's been put out there and how we follow it. It's been great from players, coaches, and all backroom staff. So yeah, there's not a lot of contact. We're using bags and we're training in small groups. I think just to make sure we confine if there's an outbreak or if someone gets sick. But I've been tested twice now already, so I think they're making really sure that if we do it right, because I think that's the main way to do it. And I think it is important to keep everyone around you safe as well. It's not just about me; it's about everyone staying safe and make sure I don't really infect someone if I get the coronavirus, or same way from someone else.
Sure. Hey, it's going to be a very interesting few months for Munster. Going into this season, there was always going to be a bedding in period with some of the new coaches, with Graham Rowntree, with Stephen Larkham. They've now got a few months to, I guess, consider their game plan, get more used to their setting, and perhaps it'll feel like a new season for them. Then you've got the new personnel additions, not least the South Africans, RG Snyman and Damien de Allende. Do you feel that Munster are, because of those reasons, in a really, really good position to attack the second half of the season?
Yeah, I think it's to any club's advantage, to at this break and really reflect on what you've done this year. But I think for us, as you just mentioned earlier, we had time, I think, as a coaching staff and as players to see what we can improve and where we can go on, and especially with as you just said, with the new additions, coaches-wise, they could see their plan and they have a nice taste now of what players they have to what they have to work with and what they can do in the competition. And the players we got is world class. I mean, not everyone walks around in the world with the World Cup medal, and especially with the two, RG mentioned them and Damien, but then Roman, and Matt coming in as well as guys who's worked with championship teams. And I think the experience they bring in is going to add value to the team and the squad for sure. And I think a very obvious thing is the academy coming through for us, especially last year and this year. We've got 5 guys coming into the system who's fitted in like a glove, and I'm actually looking forward to see what they can do and to see what's gonna hold in, what the season's gonna hold in for them this year.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting few months. It has been a very interesting few months for numerous reasons, and I need to ask you as well, CJ, because one of the big stories over the course of the lockdown has been surrounding your teammate James Cronin, who served a 1-month ban for testing positive for prednisolone and prednisone. We can stay away from the specifics of that case. I just want to ask you if there's been a conversation had with you as a player, with your teammates, after something like this, about the responsibility, I guess, that is on players to ensure that they are entering the field as clean as possible. Have those conversations happened over the last couple of months?
Yeah, I think James's thing is his thing. I think it's been handled. I think the system has taken its course, and I think it's handled quite well. I think as a player, the conversations happens. We actually have a open conversation. I think all the provinces with Irish rugby as well and Munster, we get a lot of education coming our way, with the anti-doping, and that's the thing that's Irish rugby and Munster. I know that's been top of those things in the last few years, So yeah, we get the education, and it's every few months, So especially in the last few weeks, there's been conversations, and I think everyone understands what's wanted from them and what they need to bring, to the game.
For sure. I guess the question I would have is, if you were ever to get a prescription yourself, is there a clear kind of chain of command about who you need to ask before you go into a pharmacy, and how much are those rules and that advice, how much is all that heightened after what's happened over the last little while?
Yeah, I think for me personally is I think talk to the doctor, and things get told to you, and you go get your things, and you make sure it's your things, but I mean, it's a process that we've all been through. It's probably going to be heightened, but it's not that there's an issue around that.
The independent judicial officer in this case said that Cronin must shoulder some fault for the error, despite, of course, all the official reasons, decisions saying that it was obviously accidental. Is that something that you always need to bear in mind, the fact that there will always be some fault, regardless of something being an accidental breach of protocol?
I think, it's just, it is something you need to look after as an athlete, especially because it is a thing that is part of the game, and you need to make sure that what you get into your system is something that you you can control, So I think it's a right way to do it, and I think the stuff with James has been handled in a right manner, and he's a great man, and it's been handled.
Yeah, we won't get into the specifics of that case, but one of the other cases that we've seen over the last little while has been the resultant ban for Chile boy Ralapelli, who's been banned for 8 years. It's one of two big cases that we're going to see over the next little while. We're going to have the Dianti case, which I'm sure you're aware of as well. The decision is on the way there. It was supposed to happen before coronavirus. I'm sure you'll also remember that was the big talking point going into the Rugby World Cup last year. I can remember you were asked about it at a press conference as well because of your South African connections. And these are all individual cases, CJ, but I'm just very interested to just get your take on this again about whether or not South African rugby have questions to answer about doping in their country when it comes to rugby.
Luckily, I'm in Ireland, so I think if you talk to another South African who plays in there, you can ask him that question.
For sure. I guess the point is that you would have grown up in the culture there, and you obviously announced yourself on the stage at Craven Week, which obviously has had a number of fingers pointed at it over the last few years. So you'll be familiar with the culture in South Africa. So I'm basically asking, is it unfair of me to say that there is something culturally wrong in South Africa when it comes to cheating?
Well, you're throwing me down a rabbit hole here now, but I think if if you say the culture is a cheating culture, then I think if you talk to the wrong people, you're going to be in trouble, and I'll leave it there.
I guess, sorry, but that's obviously too strong, and I guess that's a little bit hyperbole on my point. It's just the figures at Craven Week, I guess if we're just going to use your connection to South Africa, have been fairly stark down through the years. 6 doping offences in 2018, 3 tests that tested positive the year before, 4 the year before, 5 the year before that. There is always going to be big figures from this tournament, and that is where the alarm bells ring. But perhaps it's a sports thing rather than a South African sports thing. And I'm just curious on your opinion on that are we too quick to look at South Africa?
I think it's just, look, it's a difficult conversation to have. I think it is there, and it's I think as players, it's not. It's their decision if someone wants to if someone wants to dope, So I think the figures are there. It's not going to lie. So I don't know if how I know in Ireland the testing is quite strict, and it's a lot. I've been tested multiple times just in the Six Nations. I mean, it was 4 or 5 times, so that happens. So I think. I think the testing has been done, and I think a few guys, especially in South Africa, has been caught. But it's luckily it's been done, and people have been got into trouble about it, and that's it.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. And you're right, it is a difficult conversation to have, but it is an important one to have. Just kind of like a final one on that, which kind of ties this all together. Like you mentioned the scenario that you've had in the past about waking up in the morning with a pain in your back and not being able to move. It's something that I'd imagine a lot of rugby players have, especially in the modern game. There's been a lot of talk in the past about painkiller use in rugby. How careful do you need to be about painkiller use, and how informed do you need to be? Because I'd imagine you wake up the morning after a game and the temptation is there, and the temptation to use it during a game and to get painkilling injections, I'm sure, is huge as well.
Me personally, I don't like them. I like the feeling I get from them, so I don't really use a lot. I can't. If I have a sore back or a sore something, I'll try a normal way, jump in a hot bath or something like that. So it's probably easier to go that route. But me personally, no.
Fair enough. Listen, CJ, you've been great with your time. Really appreciate it. And just another reminder: Hellbent burgers. They're available in Aldi all around the country over the next little while. So make sure to get your chop stuck into them. CJ Stander, a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
OTB AM.
Yeah, CJ Stander there, Ireland and Munster rugby player, and also an ambassador for Hellbent Boerewors. The piece was recorded yesterday, and it was announced that Hellbent, along with 500 brands, have secured a contract listing in all 142 Aldi stores nationwide through the Grow with Aldi programme. That is it from OTB AM this morning. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app yet, go get it. Just search for OTB Sports in the App Store or on the Google Play Store and download it. It's where you'll find the first episode of Andy Lee Meets. Mickey Rourke is the first one, and it's an hour-long conversation that's really worth your time this weekend. Now, coming up on OTB Sports Radio today at 1 o'clock, we've got OTB Goals with Ruby Walsh, Joe Malloy in conversation with him. Friday Night Racing then is live from 3 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock is episode 5 of Alan Quinlan's How's the Head with Shane Carthy. At 7 o'clock then, as ever, and live on your radio, it's OTB with Jur. If you've missed anything this morning, you can catch it back through the OTB AM podcast. It's timestamped as well every single morning, and the best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We'll see you Monday morning. Have a good weekend.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.